It wasn't spring, but the wines here were balmy with all kinds of flower fragrances. The cities were built on both sides of the rivers with all kinds of plants covering the buildings. Under the elves' meticulous care, the plants looked organized and beautiful. The path of gravel traveled through the forest with the group of buildings winding their way down the mountains without the restrictions of city walls. This was Otteralay, one of the elf cities. Its name meant a small creek with clear and white water ripples. Therefore, it was also called White Creek City. As time went by, the creek had turned into a wide river, but people still called it with the old name. The elf clan didn't have a large population. In Silver Moon Forest, one could count the number of cities of this scale with one hand. The elves living out of the cities mostly lived in their own groups. Obviously, few humans could enter this forest. If one day, a human nation could gain permission from the Elf Council of Elders and build magic teleportation arrays to connect this forest with the human world, it would be a major event that would shock the whole world. Saint Heinz sat in his grand and glorious godly palace with a chessboard before him. One half of the chessboard was white with lively sculptured pieces of knights and mages. In the middle stood a dignified-looking nobleman holding a scepter. The other half was black, and the knight standing in the center raised a long sword. He placed a white chess piece on the black area opposite to him. It was obvious that the white chess pieces had the upper hand. Sitting across to him was a holy-looking old man wearing a snow-white priest robe. He stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Mr. Saint Heinz, your chess skill is as stunning as usual. I heard that the result of your research has even amazed many saints, Mr. Dullen." Saint Heinz said mildly. "Ha ha ha ha," the white-haired old man laughed and said, "They were arguing about a useless problem, and their eyes almost popped out when they saw my conclusion. In this area, I'm confident in my abilities." His smile oozed confidence. "By the way," Saint Dullen said, "the envoys are about to reach Silver Moon Forest, my lord." Saint Heinz said calmly, "They brought the best products of the Dullen workshop with them. They are the products of my disciples, I just gave them some tips. They are nothing." Saint Dullen shook his head with a chuckle, giving the impression that he was looking down from the peak of the tallest mountain. Saint Heinz said with a smile, "I think the elves will feel fortunate to get advice from Saint Dullen." For elves, they treated every visitor as their guest, which was a tradition of this ancient and polite clan. They welcomed any visitor who showed no hostility. While welcoming this big team of visitors, a cheerful atmosphere permeated the streets in the entire city as if the elves were celebrating a grand festival. "Welcome, Mr. Luther." The elves were friendly to any visitor who had the permission to enter their cities. Cheers and elegant harp music floated in the clear sky. With squinted eyes, Luther looked around with his right hand behind his back in a loose fist as he walked forward with the sincerest smile he could muster. "Elder Sewell." Luther dismounted from his winged lion and slightly bowed at the group of elves who were walking up to him. "I'm pleased to see you, Mr. Luther." The leader was an elf woman whose age was indeterminable at first glance. With the spirit of a teenage girl, she had the calm presence and mature grace of a woman in her 30s. She had long blonde hair resting on her shoulders, and she wore a deep green body-fitting robe which accentuated her elegant and slim figure. Each move of hers looked extremely graceful and wise. Her tone was mild while she said, "I'm surprised that Mr. Luther would make a journey to our place in person. But as you know, we don't welcome missionaries." "Of course," Luther said, "but I come to Silver Moon Forest as a merchant. I hope you don't have the wrong impression about the purpose of my trip, Elder." "Oh." This female elf elder looked surprised. "I didn't know that you've changed your profession, Mr. Luther." Since the elf clan wasn't self-sufficient with everything, they traded merchandise with humans while the relationship between the two races gradually eased in. It was true that they seldom mingled with humans, but this freedom-loving clan didn't impose many restrictions on the interchange of goods. However, foreign missionaries were not allowed to preach in Silver Moon Forest. Although there were no written rules forbidding it, this behavior was frowned upon as a blasphemy to the elves' own god. I brought a brand new cultivation mystical realm with me. It is so advanced that it will feel like it is from the next era. While they walked toward the Elder Council Hall in White Creek City, Luther announced in a loud voice, "It's the newest product of the Dullen Workshop. I think everyone can appreciate a good product, including elves. We welcome you as our guest, but I think we have our own cultivation mystical realms and don't need one from outside." Elder Sewell obviously had no interest in the new stuff since the elf clan had bountiful inheritances and great skills in making this stuff. Luther seemed very eloquent with words. "Maybe, you can just try it and see if our mystical realm is as good as yours. If possible, I think the wonderful people of your clan wouldn't mind having another option." Sewell's gaze wavered as if she were thinking of something. At this moment, another elf said mildly, "Although I don't think we need it, I think Mr. Luther is right. Our people will make the choice for themselves. If it is truly an excellent product, we can't stop people from using it. Anyway, we are confident in our own crafts." The speaker was a male elf who appeared to be in his 30s. With a smile, he said the words as if he were making a statement. "Ziz is right." Obviously, many people agreed with this male elf. "We are confident in our own crafts, right?" Elder Sewell frowned slightly since she had sensed the meaning behind Luther's words. Proud and reserved, the elves had their own long-standing combat techniques and magic spells which enabled them to gain a high standing on the continent. They were proud of their own cultivation mystical realms and didn't think that they need to import such things. However, Luther claimed that he had brought a mystical realm as good as theirs. It was not only a sales tactic, it was also a concealed provocation. While the realization dawned on her, the situation seemed to begin to slide out of her control. At this moment, in the glorious grand hall in the Judgment Godly Palace, Saint Heinz put down another chess piece. "The elves are indeed smart, but they are also overconfident and overly prideful, which makes them arrogant and conceited," Saint Dullen said with a smile. "That elder is intelligent, but the other elves are not so smart." Besides, an indescribable smile appeared on his face as he said, "This move is indeed excellent, my lord. But I think you have more plans for them, right?" Saint Dullen continued. "You saw through it." Saint Heinz said expressionlessly, "If it's only a mission to bring the cultivation mystical realm to other races, it doesn't need me planning everything. This is the beginning of the war of faith." He put down another chess piece lightly, but the move seemed to hold weight as it felt like thunder rumbled behind him. Saint Dullen froze for a moment. Then, he inhaled deeply with a solemn expression as if the whole chess game became grand and majestic because of this sentence. "Since Mr. Luther has such great confidence in the product from the Dullen Workshop, I think we can't refuse the offer." Elder Sewell stood up and said, "But are you sure that anyone from our clan, including elf guards and ordinary citizens, can try it out?" "Of course." Luther's puffy face smiled. "We are well prepared and are highly confident in the product and in Saint Dullen." Sewell looked surprised. She knew that the Dullen Workshop was an organization under that famous saint-level master, but everyone thought that he hadn't gotten involved in the business for years. "I didn't know that it was a product created by that entity." Elder Sewell looked grim, but she was still confident in her clan's strength and craftsmanship. "I'll give you 3 days, Mr. Luther. If you can prove that your cultivation mystical realm is as good as you claim, I don't think I will refuse your offer to bring this good item to our people." "Thank you." Luther got up with a smile. "You're a wise person." Elder Sewell instructed a male elf behind her, "Please bring Mr. Luther to the Spellcaster Square." Spellcaster Square was a place often visited by the elf mages. Only around this square could people see cultivation mystical realms. In the center of the huge square was a statue of a female elf who had a flower wreath on her head and a scepter lifted high in her hand. On the base of the sculpture was a huge flower bed, and several elf poets sat around it, playing harps. Of course, the most common visitors were elf rogues with long swords hanging at their belts and big bows on their backs, as well as elf mages with magic staves. "Do you need a cultivation room?" Elder Sewell asked. No, we don't, Luther said with a chuckle. St. Dullan gave it a new feature which enables us to launch it on the square. Soon, several godly palace knights set up the mystical realm on the rectangle-shaped tall platform on the east side of the square. Behind the white curtains was a fixed magic array disc engraved with complicated and beautiful pale golden array patterns. Luther asked smugly, "Do you guys want to try it? It's much more convenient than traditional cultivation mystical realms. Believe me, it's a product of the next era." Seeing the hesitation in the elves, Luther beckoned to a godly palace knight and said, "Please try it out for us." He took out a crystal from his storage space and put it on the stone table which was especially set up to hold this crystal. The light emitting from the crystal soon turned into a curtain of thick mist through which a clear image gradually appeared. It seemed that the original space had been erased, and in its place was the clear scene from another world. Obviously, it was an advanced spiritual spell visual projection. At this moment, they saw that the knight had changed into ordinary leather armor on the screen, and there were 8 teleportation arrays in this misty fantasy world. Luther explained, each teleportation array can turn into a different mystical realm. This is a compound mystical realm designed by St. Dullan from the assassination attempts that he experienced and the related conspiracies. In this mystical realm, we'll encounter several assassination attempts and some battles between small-scale legions. Of course, during your leisure time, you can practice your skills by hunting magic beasts in the forests. We even put in the extremely useful anti-assassination spiritual spells and the optimized casting methods. These spells include radiant light detection, energy resonance, darkness dispel, etc. While he talked, Luther was satisfied to see the surprise on Elder Sewell's face. If my memories are right, radiant light detection and energy resonance are the godly palace's secret spiritual spells, right? Elder Sewell asked. You're right, Luther said in a loud voice, but St. Dullan is generous. To remove all the despicable sneak attackers, he decided to share these spiritual spells with the public. Luther continued, but this mystical realm has more than advanced spiritual spells. It can decide what level of mystical realm to use according to the user's strength. At this moment, the knight entered a strange-looking secret chamber through a teleportation array. In the secret chamber, they could see a grand human city. The setting sun created a long shadow of the city. On the wide street in the center of the city, the knight acted as a guard in a team of officials from the godly palace. Looking at the high-resolution images, Elder Sewell was even more astonished. Look! He is a level 6 knight, so he is protecting a senior priest instead of St. Dullan. After all, he chuckled and said, not every ordinary person can enter a battle involving Mr. Dullan. He continued, here, we can arrange the positions of the guards in the team. Of course, the current arrangement is quite good, but the mystical realm gives other options for you to choose. You can also choose to be assassins to check the effectiveness of our guards. Luther continued with great passion, regardless if you're a mercenary or an elf guard, it's necessary to learn how to protect a group of people and fight with attackers. The combat techniques learned from real combat are much more dependable than those in ordinary one-to-one training or solo training. He became even more smug when he saw Elder Sewell look more astonished each second. I think this is what a real cultivation mystical realm should look like. It looks very good. Elder Sewell hid her astonishment, not expecting the Dullan workshop to make such a great improvement in the production of cultivation mystical realms. But to see if a mystical realm is a good one or not, we don't look at its convenience. The most important feature is the design of battles. Some mystical realms look good but have battles too good to be true. Besides, assassinations are full of unexpected elements, and you never know what kind of enemies you will meet. Then, why don't you try it? Luther smiled with confidence. After the assassination attempt on him, the Dullan workshop had further strengthened the anti-assassination abilities in this mystical realm. I dare to say that no one understands this area more than we do. I'm sure that no assassins can break this cultivation mystical realm. Meanwhile, in St. Heinz Palace when a white chess piece was put down on the black section of the chessboard, that place emitted a vague white light. St. Heinz said mildly, only when they are convinced will they accept the beliefs. When they begin to believe, the faith will be slowly attached to them like chains on their necks. If some fanatic believers appear in this clan, even Saint Dolan had a thread of excitement in his voice. I'll amaze these ignorant elves with the great advancements that we have achieved on the continent. Luther squinted his small eyes and smiled. He seemed to foresee the scene in which this rich land gradually submitted to them in St. Heinz's subsequent plans, and the elves called for the god of radiant light judgment. This is our best training method for guards, and we've designed and optimized plans to handle all kinds of emergencies. Now, is there anyone who wants to try it? I'm sure you'll like it. At this moment, many elves had gathered on the square. In the past, they had seen humans coming here to sell their products, but none of them were this big in scale. Like favored treasures of nature, the elves were all exquisite and beautiful. These audience members created a gorgeous scene while they stood on the square and watched the show. By the way, Luther said, I'm sure that you don't know those dark spiritual spells, so we've prepared all kinds of stealth spiritual spell scrolls for the people who intend to play as assassins. As for the knights, we will only use the spiritual spells that you are familiar with, including the radiant light detection, energy resonance, and darkness dispel instead of godly spells to counter the stealth spells. To be fair, we can put the venue in the forest. Elder Sewell was a bit embarrassed, thinking that the conditions were too good to decline. Although assassins were at the disadvantage, things would be different when the battle venue was put in the forest. We'll try it. A small team of elves stood out. Please. Luther gestured gracefully. The cultivation mystical realm in that shop is truly interesting. A small team of elves was advancing slowly along the winding river toward the center of the city. Elf girl Sala still looked groggy since she hadn't slept well last night. She gave a very unladylike yawn. Yawn, noticing her teammates' baffled glances, the elf girl who always took care of herself to maintain a ladylike image instantly woke up. Yet. I hope that we'll go and visit that shop again when we have time. The team captain looked at the blue sky reminiscently. I do miss the spicy sticks. They are an ultimate delicacy. He brought out a bottle of iced red tea and took a sip of it with great enjoyment. I heard that despicable Luther has come to our elf clan, Sala said in displeasure. This big liar did his best to belittle the people in another continent. Instead, I only saw courage, elegance, and power in those people. Ugh! Why are they all running toward that direction? An elf young man beside Sala pointed forward and asked curiously, what's happening? Soon, they pushed their way into the inner circle of the crowd and heard a wave of exclamations before they could stand still. In the spiritual spell visual projection, the elves had been butchered by the team of knights wearing godly palace armor. With a huge sword in hand, one knight killed the last elf, and the blood sprayed all over the projection. Are they, the Elder Guard team? Sala yelled in alarm. My goodness! So powerful, how can it be? This is the third attempt. Do you want to have one more try? While looking at the result of the battle on the screen, Luther said with a laugh, you sent the Elder Guard team. This time, will you try it yourself, Elder? What is this despicable guy up to this time? The newly arrived elf team members frowned at the scene before them. Regardless of how you hide yourselves, you'll always leave behind a clue. On the screen, the knight walked under a big tree. Look! He can still detect a very tiny fluctuation of a spiritual spell. This one hid himself well, but he still was discovered by our knights, Luther explained, as if these elves, regardless of how they hid themselves, were just a joke to him. Then, they'll engage in up-front battle. Luther continued to explain from his experience, regardless of how the elves attack, the knights can immediately find the best formation and combat techniques to use to fight back. He said proudly when he got to this point, I can say with pride that our mystical realm is absolutely the best in the whole world. At this moment, Saint Dulin activated a spiritual spell visual projection to show the scenes sent back by Luther. "How are things going with the elf clan?" Saint Heinz asked mildly. "Ha ha ha." While watching the spiritual spell visual projection, Dulin laughed and said, "From the looks of it, things are going very well for us. All the elves watching the mystical realm are stunned by our creation. Maybe the news has even spread to the elf royal palace by now. I wonder, if the elf queen Her Majesty will be angry about this." Dulin laughed heartily. Meanwhile, a hearty laugh sounded on the square in White Creek City. "I invite anyone here to check out our perfect defense system. I dare to say that even the most powerful assassin can't leave this mystical realm alive. Yes, the most powerful assassin will definitely become a corpse in this mystical realm. Do you guys want to train in this mystical realm? Nonsense!" A furious voice came from the crowd. Sala pushed out from the crowd and said angrily with her hands on her waist, "The method shown in this mystical realm can't block any real assassins." Everyone looked over and saw that it was a young elf girl. "Isn't this the Snow Pigeon team? How come they are here?" Luther's small eyes squinted. "It's easy to bluff. Little girl, it's a pity that there are no real master assassins among us. Otherwise, I will show you how they are defeated in this mystical realm." "Elder, we'd like to have a try." Sala walked up as well. "Didn't he say that anyone can check it out?" "Little Sala," Elder Sewell patted Sala's head. This young elf had grown up under her eyes, but... She shook her head and said, "It's not a game. Even the Elder Guard team failed, please, just let us try." Sala used her secret technique, which was begging and acting cute. Luther was displeased with this interruption since he was about to end this session with success. He asked casually, "Little girl, do you know this stuff?" "A little bit," Sala said. "Before I returned, I met two masters named Altair and Ezio, and they taught me some basic skills." Watching the spiritual spell visual projection, Saint Dulin froze. "There are such assassins." Elder Sewell frowned slightly, wondering how Sala managed to mingle with human assassins during her trip. After all, assassins had a bad reputation among humans. At this moment, a peaceful round lake was also projecting the scene happening in White Creek City. This lake was surrounded by beautiful and grand buildings that were a part of the Elf Royal Palace, which seemed like they were built in ancient times. Altair? Ezio? When did the humans have these master assassins? Are they frauds? Luther laughed and said, "Okay. But I must tell you that I've never heard of their names before. I hope these two unknown people helped you and can make you last 1 minute in the mystical realm, cute girl." Soon, Sala entered the cultivation mystical realm. Elder Sewell looked at the young elf captain in bafflement as she asked, "What are you guys waiting for? If we all enter, it's impossible to assassinate." The elves looked exasperated. "Ugh!" Luther froze as well. While looking at the spiritual spell visual projection, he asked, "She will enter alone?" "Right," the other elves said calmly. "I wonder if the little girl came here to joke around." Behind Luther, the knight captain also grinned. Suddenly, exclamations rose in the square in White Creek City. The audience watched while the elf girl on the spiritual spell visual projection walked directly toward the dense forest with a sword in her hand. What is she doing? She doesn't even know how to hide herself. Go up and hide on a tree. Elves usually got up into the big trees and shot at their enemies with arrows. Protecting several red-robed priests, a team of about 20 knights in armor came along the forest path toward Sala. Elder Sewell's face darkened at this scene. "Are you here to make more trouble for me?" She glared at the other elves beside her and asked, "What's happening?" "She's doing it to avoid her opponent's spiritual spell detection," one young elf answered. Elder Sewell turned livid in fury, wondering how someone could dodge detection this way. With a smile, Luther watched the spiritual spell visual projection as if he were waiting to see this reckless elf girl humiliate herself. He was sure that the elf queen must be watching this battle in her royal palace as well. He wondered what expression she had at this moment. "Mr. Luther, your tea." A knight brought Luther a cup of tea so that he could ease his thirst after talking for so long. "She will just follow the others and humiliate herself," Luther chuckled and removed the cup lid while his eyes were glued on the screen. On the spiritual spell visual projection, the team of knights had obviously seen the girl walking toward them. The knight at the foremost of the team roared and hacked down his huge sword with a horrifying whistling sound. Wind roar hack. Sala raised her long sword. When she played Assassin's Creed, she couldn't use her essence, but it was different now. She wondered what would happen when she added her powerful strength to the excellent skills she learned from the game. While recalling the things that she had learned in the virtual reality training, Sala circulated the essence in her body. Speed up. Wind power. Sala took a swift stride forward, instantly getting close to that knight. Then, she pushed her slim sword against her opponent's sword handle with a slight force. Boom! The huge sword suddenly moved to one side and heavily crashed into the ground beside Sala. Under the strong momentum, the knight couldn't withdraw his sword, and he watched as Sala's sword stabbed into his chest in horror. Counterattack. Before the others could attack, her blade that was covered in blood instantly slit open another knight's throat. She moved slightly and stabbed her sword into the chest of a knight on her left. Remembering the extremely cool combo that the shop owner had demonstrated, she decided to copy them. Combo skill begin. The audience heard Sala murmur while she slashed and hacked, "Don't assassinate, use Muzu." The sword in her hand looked like an instrument of great precision. Seeing Sala killing 5 knights, Luther froze with the teacup in his hand after having taken one mouthful of tea. Tink! A crisp noise sounded. Oops! My combo kills are not connected. I'm sorry. Her sword pierced forward again into the knight's chest. Elder Sewell's eyes almost popped out, and she thought, "You killed 5 of them with one strike each and feel sorry for being slightly on the defense. There's not enough time for you to move in stealth. Just fight and kill. Stealth is useless since you'll be discovered sooner or later." While Sala said those words, she had downed about 9 knights. Killing everyone who saw you is the perfect assassination, right? When she finished, no one was standing. What did I see? The elf audience on the square froze at the scene. In St. Heinz Palace, Dullen and Heinz exchanged a look of disbelief. What's happening? In the elf royal palace, a gaze that was as cold and proud as a goddess shot across the mirror-like lake surface and saw the scene. The gaze froze. Is this really our little elf? Luther exchanged a look with the knight captain beside him. Half a minute later, Sala came out from the cultivation mystical realm and said, "Mr. Luther, if we learn the things shown in this mystical realm, we can't even block one assassin." Pu. Luther spewed tea over the knight captain's face. Stealth is useless because you'll be discovered sooner or later. The people savored the words while feeling stunned. St. Heinz and St. Dullen stared at each other in a daze. What the heck? Elder Sewell snapped back to her senses and murmured, "What she said seems to be sensible." Yet. Very sensible, the elves on the square nodded. Besides, how can she play an assassin character with such magnificence? Don't people say that human assassins are a bunch of despicable sneak attackers? It doesn't seem true at all. How come this elf had only learned a few basic skills and can look so dashing? The group of people had tears on their faces while they watched. Meanwhile, Luther's expression turned unreadable. Where did she come up with this? She just hacked her way from the outside to the center and killed them all? Then, you tell me that it was an assassination? No. It's not an assassination. Luther said loudly, Our mystical realm teaches skills against assassins. Why isn't it an assassination?" Sala said with a snort, "Mr. Luther, tell me who else in the mystical realm saw me killing these people." Luther's face darkened, and he felt a little dizzy. It seems like I can't come up with a rebuttal. No one alive had seen her kill those people, which means that it was indeed an assassination. The mystical realm that Mr. Luther brought indeed showed us the great craftsmanship that the Dulin workshop has regarding alchemy. With a smile, Elder Sewell changed the subject and said, "But I think this mystical realm has big defects, as we all have seen. Our elf clan has never imported cultivation mystical realms before," Elder Sewell continued, "so we must consider this issue carefully. I'll gather the opinions of the citizens in White Creek City and talk about it with other elders. I'm sure that we'll come up with a decision very soon. I think we'll be fair, but we only accept truly excellent products. I don't hold high hopes for the mystical realm that Mr. Luther brought, it has major defects." With the last sentence, she was obviously asking Luther to back off. In the past, the elf clan had formed friendships with other races but had been hurt many times, which was why they were cautious with each visitor. However, they would treat each friendly visitor with equal friendliness. Their caution came from the lessons that they had learned in the past. After all, not every race loved peace as much as they did. Although he had anticipated this outcome, Luther's face still darkened. He couldn't understand what had gone wrong. At this moment, Saint Heinz had turned off the spiritual spell visual projection. He never expected that the simple mission of opening the gate of the elf clan would fail so miserably. With the first step being blocked, he couldn't launch any of his perfect subsequent plans. He clenched his fists, which seemed to emit golden lights of fury. Like a blazing golden fire, the whole palace seemed to shake under his anger. "My lord, what should we do now?" the white-haired old man, Saint Dulin, asked in a deep voice. Saint Heinz paused for a moment. His godlike and wholly pure face looked thoughtful. "Now that this move failed, we must find out the reason behind this unexpected failure. Ask Luther to move his butt back here and investigate." He continued after a pause, "Besides, I'll meditate in seclusion for a while. If I'm lucky, I might receive instructions from that ultimate supreme existence as for the next steps that we should take." "I hope you'll obtain holy inspirations," Saint Dulin said with a bow. "I think we'll leave now." Luther's fat face looked so chilly that it seemed like ice could be scraped off of it. "Won't you stay for a few days?" "No, thank you." Luther left in a huff. Seeing the overbearing godly palace knights leaving in dejection, Sala jumped and cheered. At this moment, Elder Sewell heaved a sigh of relief. In fact, when more and more elves began to gather on the square, she had found that the situation had gotten out of her control. However, she still had confidence in their own crafts before the test, but the subsequent tryouts shattered her confidence and hope. If Luther succeeded with his scheme, the elf clan's mystical realm industry would receive a huge blow. However, if she chose to kick them out by force at that stage, she couldn't go back on her words. It was something that didn't fit their personalities and culture. She had a vague feeling that the Judgment Godly Palace had a hidden agenda behind this trip, but now she was relieved that the issue was solved to her advantage even though she still didn't know what it was. The sensitive elves also seemed to feel that a wave of gloomy mist had evaporated. The grim atmosphere on the square was now replaced by the usual tranquil peacefulness. Beautiful harp music sounded on the square. "We're fine now, guys. How did she do that? What's up?" Elder Sewell. With her hands clasped behind her back, Sala looked at the beautiful woman before her curiously while the latter observed her up and down in bafflement. "How come you seem quite different after your trip?" Elder Sewell looked Sala up and down as if she was trying to confirm that this girl was indeed the one who had grown up under her eyes. Maybe I grew taller." Sala smirked. "No. The two masters you mentioned, Master Altair and Master Ezio," Elder Sewell said, "do humans really have such powerful master assassins?" Elder Sewell looked surprised. Besides her, some other elves were also curious about these assassins. Also, Elder Sewell asked again, "How did you push away the Windroar hack?" Remembering how the knights stood there dumbly, basically waiting to be killed, she felt incredulous and couldn't believe her eyes. It's the counterattack, you have to use the right force at the right place and the right time. You learned it from those two masters as well. We're masters too, but how come we don't know this fancy skill? Obviously, although they were all called masters, they had different levels in different worlds. Can you tell us about them? It's a long story about faith and freedom, Sala said smugly. Elder Sewell, do you want to hear the story? Elder Sewell froze for a moment. I told stories to this girl when she was little. How come something seems a bit strange? Soon, Sala began to tell the story of Assassin's Creed starting from Altair. This mystical realm has so many things. As an elf elder who had done deep study on cultivation mystical realms, Elder Sewell knew that the more complicated the mystical realms were, the more difficult it was to make them look real. If someone wanted to achieve both, they must have extraordinary skills in this area. Obviously, although the elf clan had great skills in this area, from what she heard about Assassin's Creed from Sala, this mystical realm seemed even better than the products of the Dullen workshop. Of course. Seeing Elder Sewell's astonishment, Sala was secretly pleased. Besides these things, the mystical realm also has a thing called eagle vision which is super useful. Oh, and there is also the leap of faith. After Sala's lengthy description, Elder Swell finally had a general idea about this mystical realm. You mean Master Altair used the eagle vision to see through the illusions created by his mentor with a piece of Eden, and he defeated his mentor and sealed that piece of Eden which contained extremely great power. This means that he couldn't use this power himself. Right. In Assassin's Creed, Brotherhood, I understood that this master didn't indulge in the power of being the leader of the Brotherhood. Instead, he went to other countries and helped the Brotherhoods in those countries free themselves and spread the meaning of the creed. Sala brought her hands together before her chest and said in excitement and admiration, "He's truly an admirable man." "He's indeed admirable." Elder Sewell nodded and asked in amazement, "What happened after that?" "The sequels haven't been released yet." Sala said in anger, "I could only hear some things from the era that Master Ezio was in. I wish the shop owner would have released the other mystical realms as early as possible." Then, she turned sulky. "But it doesn't matter anyway since I have no time to visit Kanglan City." She looked sullen. Looking at Sala's sulky face, Elder Sewell chuckled and said, "You just want me to give you more time to play in that human city, right?" Well. Sala's pretty face blushed when her little scheme was seen through. From Sala's descriptions, Elder Sewell realized that this weird mystical realm seemed to have no loopholes. After all, even the Dullen workshop and the biggest alchemist workshops on the continent had to admit to the public that their cultivation mystical realms couldn't avoid loopholes. Neither could the mystical realms made by the elf clan. The humans on the continent have achieved such a high level with their alchemy craftsmanship. Elder Sewell was surprised. She had thought that the mystical realms made by the Dullen workshop were a product of the next era, but it seemed that this Assassin's Creed was even better. Just the Dullen workshop had given her such a headache, let alone this Assassin's Creed. If these new cultivation mystical realms all swarmed into the elf clan one day, she was afraid that they wouldn't be able to resist them. Elder Sewell smiled bitterly and said, "It seems it's time to take the kids out and experience the world. Otherwise, we'll be left behind." Hearing Sewell's words, Sala exclaimed, "Awesome! We can play the multiplayer mode then." Multiplayer mode? What's this thing?" Then, Sala explained to Sewell how to play this multiplayer mode. "It's simple. We can do multiplayer missions, which means that we can do assassinations together in a team." Soon, Elder Sewell got dizzy with all kinds of new words. Meanwhile, Fang Qi was reading the information on the system interface. He found that his privileges had been upgraded again. Now, his privilege level was level 8. Privilege level 8, you have the right to decide when to release movies and games, the right to live stream on the big screen, the right to decorate the inside of the shops, after reading through the privileges that he had gained before, Fang Qi saw a new one, Level 1 right to unlock new items. Level 1 right to unlock items in the system store. Other than the items that Fang Qi had unlocked, he could only unlock 2 items with the new privilege right now. One was cappuccinos and the other was lattes. The items would consume 1 million and 1.2 million crystals respectively to activation. After activation, each cup would consume a few crystals to make. The prices were 20 crystals and 24 crystals per cup respectively. Of course, Fang Qi could also re-unlock Sprite, which the shop once sold with the same selling price. In the old shops, the system had accumulated about 50 million crystals, and it was the number after spending money on the expansion of the new shop and the production of new games and movies. With more customers visiting the new shop, the number of magic crystals that the shop had earned grew to the equivalent of over 1 million crystals. Fang Qi had noticed that the currency exchange rate between magic crystals and crystals was 1:8 for him. In fact, the value between the two was about 1:10. On this continent, there were minerals similar to crystals which had more impurities than ordinary magic crystals, and people had to spend some of its value on the refinery process to remove these impurities. In contrast, the system didn't have to worry about this issue. He could now unlock some items in the system store. At the current level 1, Fang Qi could only unlock things for his own use if he didn't want to invest large sums of money. At level 1, he could unlock only a few things, including the owner brown cigarettes that he had smoked before. However, Mr. Fang didn't have much money on him right now. Mr. Fang had used his own money to expand the size of the esports competition. Since he himself had been an active professional player before he traveled through space and time, he didn't mind spending money on this. After he came to this continent, he had bought a shop in the center of the city, which left him with little savings left. Therefore, Mr. Fang decided not to buy the items in the system store for the time being. However, he thought that he could unlock one of the new items for the shop. After all, it would use the system's funds. Of course, he couldn't use too much of the funds that the system had since the money was required to be transferred into energy to activate the defensive mechanisms inside the shops. So, he decided to release one item. "I'll release cappuccino first," Mr. Fang murmured to himself. By now, Luther had returned from the territory of the elf clan. Sitting in the godly palace, his face was chilly. What happened? How did a handful of elves achieve that? "Sir, please calm down," a knight captain said. "Who's that Altair? Where did this assassin come from? How come I've never heard of him before?" Luther knocked down the teacup on the table and shouted, "Go and find it out." "Yes. By the way." Luther stopped the knight captain and said, "Bring the assassins who we captured last time from the cells. I'll interrogate them with torture. I believe that they will confess everything they know." Reading the numbers on the document, he heaved a sigh of relief when he found that it seemed like this failure had no impact on the mystical realm of the Dulin workshop. Obviously, word couldn't travel so fast since people had to spread them to one another. Dulin's face was still dark. He had participated in St. Hein's plans which had consumed them lots of time and energy. It was only natural for him to feel furious that their carefully made plans were disrupted by 2 unknown assassins. Perhaps he had to make changes and create new plans. Meanwhile, he issued the order, "Find out who botched everything." "Yes." "Wait." When the priest bowed and was about to leave, Dulin said, "I've never heard of the 2 assassins before, but that elf girl didn't look like she was lying. The names might be fake names or nicknames for 2 assassins in the underground council." He waved his hand and said, "Go and find out the background of this Altair. Interrogate those assassins in the cells and see if you can find some clues." It was another sunny morning. Joseph, Ron, and their peers had just finished their training. Walking on the wide street in the city center, they suddenly exclaimed, "How come the elves are here again?" A large group of elves, at least dozens of them, came to Kanglan City. My goodness! So many elves! A passing mercenary gasped and was dumbfounded. On my ancestors! I've never seen so many elves before. A passing mage gaped at them. Okay. Okay. Little Sala. It's just a shop that is operating a few cultivation mystical realms. Is it really as awesome as you say? Elder Sewell looked doubtful as the little elf babbled all the way into the city. She admitted that the shop had good stories and good mystical realms, but she felt like Sala was piling too many compliments on it. Sala boasted about spicy sticks being more delicious than the mystic taste fruit, iced red tea being better than the spring water brewed with the leaves of life, instant noodles being tastier than fruits from the earthly tree, and Coke which could instantly lift one's mood. After all, it is only a shop for mystical realms. It isn't a snack shop. Furthermore, even if it is a snack shop, its snacks can never compare with the green, natural delicacies in the elf clan. She is making it sound like these snacks are more tempting to elves than the spring of life. Elder Sewell didn't believe Sala and ignored all the non-important stuff. She was just here to see how far the cultivation mystical realms had progressed in the human world instead of eating snacks. The several elves in the Elder Guard team who came along also looked disdainful. One of them was an elf guard wearing elegant and exquisite light armor, and his long brown hair was tied behind his head, making him look elegant. He said, "Humans only pay attention to the taste instead of its value when cooking. In fact, I don't think their food is tasty at all. I once tried a delicacy cooked by a human master chef. I truly doubt that the salty and spicy food is edible." The elf said with a faint smile on his face. Ha 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 ha. Beside him, an elf took out a piece of green fruit and said, "Fortunately, I came prepared." He bit into it with enjoyment while a refreshing fragrance floated off from the crisp and juicy fruit. Laughter sounded among the elves. At this moment, Mr. Fang lazily stretched in the morning sunshine and finally opened the door. Alina and the other assassins entered the shop at this moment. Helen, Commander Elvin, and other members of the Golden Griffin Knight Legion had the habit of having breakfast in the shop before going to their training. "Hi. Good morning, sir." A girl wearing a black mage robe greeted him and entered the shop. "Good morning." Mr. Fang froze for a second. It seemed like he didn't know every customer and was only familiar with a few of them. It reminded him that the few elves who had visited the shop every day in the past while had been missing in the last couple of days. With this thought on his mind, Mr. Fang was about to return to his seat. Then, he rubbed his eyes, afraid that his eyes were playing tricks on him. "Sir." The elves who hadn't visited this shop for a few days came back with a large group of elves. It was a grand scene to see as a big group filed into the shop. "So many. How did you lure them here?" "Humph." Sala said smugly, "I brought my elders here. I'm good, Mr. Fang had never seen so many elves in his life. This was a big team of elves. Despite the turbulence and thoughts inside, Mr. Fang managed to remain calm and nod coolly. This shop owner can remain calm and cool. Elder Sewell nodded to herself and thought, he indeed looks like a master. Could it be that he is the master who created Assassin's Creed? Meanwhile, several people stood at the counter and asked, "Sir, what's this cappuccino thing?" In the old shops, some people stood around the counters as well. None of them had heard of such a weird name before. The names of the products in the shop were getting stranger and stranger. Ugh! The shop owner released something new. Elf girl Sala immediately looked over. "It seems to be food," Helen answered, startled to see Sala coming back. When she turned around, she froze and thought, how come there are so many elves in the shop? Are the elves all moving around in large groups now? Food. Sala's eyes lit up as she asked, "The shop now has a new delicacy." "Yes," Helen said, "I'm going to try it and see if it's as good as instant noodles. If it's as good as spicy sticks, I'm sure that I'll come and buy it every day." Alina got in the line. "Do you guys want to try it?" A few elves got in line as well and asked the other elves. Forget it. I'd rather die than try these human delicacies. The elf who had criticized human food said, when I traveled on the continent, I used to buy fruits on the roadside instead of buying such food that isn't edible. I have some fruits of the earthly tree. One elf took out his fruits and bit into one with enjoyment. Mr. Gins, do you want one? Then, he handed one to the elf in the Elder Guard team who said that he would rather die than eat human food. What's it? Ugh! How come it smells so good? The elves sitting on the couches with disdain on their faces looked over. The elf who brought fruits with him also looked over in puzzlement, pausing in his act of biting into his fruit. Soon, they saw Sala and other elves walking over, each holding a mug of cappuccino. The members of Golden Griffin Knight Legion each had one mug of cappuccino as well. The rich aroma of milk and coffee filled the whole shop. The elf eating fruit inhaled deeply twice. The elf named Gins in the Elder Guard team was at a loss for words. Lance, the captain of Snow Pigeon team, also sat down with a mug of cappuccino and casually sipped with enjoyment. The soft milky flavor melted on their tongues, and the bitter taste of coffee turned into the rich and lingering aftertaste. Ah! They almost screamed at the great taste. How come it tastes so good? Seeing their intoxicated expressions, the other elves who hadn't drank it yet swallowed their saliva silently. Ha 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 ha. This smells so good. Should we try it too? What's this? Cheese. How come there's a floral pattern on it? Elder Sewell's beautiful big eyes stared at Sala's coffee and saw the image of a small black cat on the top. Isn't it a beverage? How come it looks so cute? Immediately, they each bought one mug and began sipping with great enjoyment. Ah! It smells so good! While the elves, knights, and assassins enjoyed their beautiful morning, some people were not so lucky. At this moment, Luther sat in the underground prison in Grey Eagle City with a ferocious expression on his face. His face was distorted in a fury. These damn assassins! If not for these people, I wouldn't have been moved to this place. As an ambassador of the Radiant Light Godly Nation, I was actually sent to this desolate place to do the investigation, which will indefinitely postpone my own work. He couldn't bear it. Before him was the assassins who they had captured earlier. Covered in wounds, some of them seemed to have passed out. Mr. Luther. A knight hurried in. I've got some clues. Ugh. Luther's small eyes rolled and turned to him as he asked, what clues? The knight quickly whispered something to him. We found that Altair seems to be these assassins' pioneer. They follow the creed of nothing is true, everything is permitted soon. The knight told him every detail that had been found out. My men overheard these from the conversations among the assassins. I think most of the information is true. Luther nodded and then gestured to one guard. Wake him up. Nodding, the guard woke the prisoner up with a bucket of cold water. The assassin opened his eyes slowly and saw a fat guy leaning over to him and asking, who is Altair? I don't know. He shook his head repeatedly. He screamed when the whip lashed on him. I ask again, who is Altair? Luther's voice was colder. I don't know who Altair is. The assassin screamed when another lash landed on him viciously. You don't know. I will tell you the consequences of you not knowing. More screams rose. A long while later, Luther asked again coldly, do you know Altair? I do. Who is he? Pleased, Luther leaned over him immediately and asked. The assassin was stupefied. I really don't know about this. Whip him. You don't know the great mentor and pioneer of you assassins? Are you an assassin or not? Are you kidding me? Whip him harder. More shrill screams came from the cell. 3 minutes later, do you know who Altair is? Luther looked even colder. I do. Who is he? He's the great mentor and pioneer of our assassins. The assassin yelled. Humph! It seems like you know him. Luther sneered. You dare to play tricks on me and play dumb? Now I ask you, do you know who Ezio is? I don't know, the assassin looked baffled. Ah! He screamed when another lash landed on him. You are telling me that you don't know the master assassin, the great eagle of Florence? Luther roared in fury, whip him. 3 minutes later, do you know who Ezio is? I do. The assassin howled immediately. Tell me. He's our master assassin and the great eagle of Florence, the assassin howled immediately as if he was scared of being slow. Then, tell me about their plans. This. I really don't know. Hit him. Beat him hard. 10 minutes later. I'll tell you everything. Altair is our great assassin mentor and the pioneer of assassins. He changed the code of conduct for assassins in every respect and understood the real assassin's creed. Ezio is the great eagle of Florence and a master assassin. It was him who reassembled the Brotherhood and understood the true meaning of nothing is true, everything is permitted. He was fluent with his answer without being asked. Greatly satisfied, Luther nodded and said with a cold smile, see? You know everything. Now, tell me, These are the things that you told me, what else can I tell you? The assassin's face turned ashen, and he passed out. Mr. Luther, he passed out. If I continue beating him, would he? The knight was afraid that they couldn't get anything useful if they beat the prisoner to death. I'll interrogate that one. Luther pointed at another assassin. After waking him up with cold water, Luther glared at him with a distorted expression as he asked, do you know who Altair is? It was inlaid in the land like a piece of beautiful jade inlaid in a beautiful dress. However, a few impurities lurked in this jade, and unknown gloomy auras flowed in several areas. It embodied a huge catastrophe. Even if the remnant presence had been dispelled little by little, it stuck around on the land stubbornly. It would be a long time before it was completely erased. In the royal palace, several elf elders gathered. Some of them appeared to be of the same age as Elder Sewell, and some of them looked ancient. Among them was an extremely old man. With his long white beard touching the ground and his back bent, he still looked hale and high-spirited while wearing a spotless snow-white robe. At this moment, he stood before the silver moon lake and stared at the reflection of the beautiful forest in the lake. At this moment, he asked, the Snow Pigeon team has searched several cities in the Morning Light Empire and didn't find a single clue. I wonder, maybe we are too paranoid. Another elf elder shook his head, looking uncertain. I hope so. The oldest elf looked grim at this moment. Meanwhile in the godly palace, Luther had interrogated all of the captured assassins. Although he couldn't find more information about Altair and Ezio, he got some clues about those assassins who had gotten away. Perhaps they haven't left the Morning Light Empire yet, Luther said in a cold voice, find them for me. These damn assassins! I'll let them have a taste of my power. He roared with a chilly expression, I'll let these bugs know that they can't afford to mess with us. In the human nations, one rarely saw elves, but it wasn't unusual to see other races in some cities. Black Iron Castle was such a place. It was a city to the north of Kanglan City and was called the capital of craftsmen. It was a human city mostly inhabited by craftsmen and alchemists, but one could also see dwarf workshops here. Due to the mix of inhabitants, this city was one of the few gathering places for assassins in the nation. Other unknown things were also lurking in this place. Yes, unknown things. After all, even the huge organizations such as the Judgment Godly Palace didn't dare to claim that they knew everything about the world, let alone others. Under the gloomy sky stood the tallest steeple in the Black Iron Castle. It was said that this building had sealed an ancient and horrifying monster before the Morning Light Empire was established. It was a monster from ancient times, and it was heard that it had brought blazing hell to every place it had gone to and burned down most of the places on the continent. It was a horrid disaster. Of course, many people had just regarded this as a legend or even a rumor since they had heard many other similar tales from bards. After all, bards loved to gather and tell such tales that were unrealistic. Since no one had ever seen the things told in the tales, the people here had never blindly believed these stories. A huge shadow engulfed the castle silently like a dark curtain falling from the sky. A dark voice roared in an unknown space, "I've slumbered for thousands of years. Soon, very soon, I'll recover my strength. Then, I'll turn this nation into hell. I'll eat all the humans in this place. I'll show these damn humans the price that they have to pay for angering me." On the other side of the nation, Mr. Fang was leisurely standing in the corridor of the internet cafe with a mug of cappuccino in his hand, watching the elves play games. Wow, Mr. Fang sipped the coffee and sighed, enjoying the rich and fragrant milk and coffee spreading on his tongue. At this moment, the elves had formed a team to play Assassin's Creed. "We finally come to this place," before them was the Grand Pantheon. Crowds thronged on the square outside this temple. "Hey! I saw this scene in the cinematic trailer!" Sala yelled in excitement. "Right! Right! Right! This is the one!" An assassin walked out of the crowd while soldiers and others back away from him. Another elf exclaimed, "It's so cool!" Who is he?" Captain Lance's face twitched. "I don't know, I only know that he's the one wearing a red robe." At this moment, Elder Sewell was playing as Ezio while the others played as unknown assassins in the Brotherhood. "Come on, Elder, we'll bring you to do a perfect assassination. I promise you that it will be super cool." An elf in the Snow Pigeon team offered. "How do we assassinate?" As a new player, Elder Sewell was still confused. "Elder, you walk down other there," the elf directed. "We'll get up and set an ambush. Come on! Come on! Come on!" Captain Lance said, "Here is how it goes. You walk out alone, and the people will back away in fear since they are afraid of you. He's the Eagle of Florence after all." Sala obviously understood it. Just as demonstrated in the trailer, the people will get scared and call for elite soldiers. Then, you give us a signal, and we will shoot arrows from the roof, killing all of them." The elf captain added. Obviously, he had watched and studied the trailer many times. "Oh," Elder Sewell looked at the big group of elite Templar knights and the royal guards armed to their teeth around the core position. "I'll just walk up, they will back away in fear, because I'm Ezio, the Eagle of Florence, that's it." Sala said with a nod, "Then, we'll swarm up after you send us the signal. We'll land from the sky." Having spent lots of time in the internet cafe, she had obviously picked up some slang. Controlling a female assassin, Sala got up to the roof and advanced to the direction of the Pantheon. Other elves followed her closely. "Are you guys ready?" Elder Sewell asked. "In a minute. Elder, you can go out now. We'll find good shooting positions." The elves killed some Templar knights on the roof facing away from the street. These people were blocking their way. Professionally, they sneaked into the best positions they could find. "I'll walk out now," Elder Sewell yelled. "Okay. Okay." They worked together in a seamless and harmonious way. When the Pope's carriage team came, Elder Sewell controlled Ezio to stride out from the hiding place. Just as in the trailer, the crowds backed away from him. At this moment, the other elves had come to an empty residential house to dodge people's eyes. "Hey! This door is locked. How do I open it? It seems that we need Assassin's special lock-picking tool, let me try it. We'll open this door and set the ambush on the balcony." A lock-picking tool was stuck into the keyhole. 10 seconds later, "Are you in position?" Elder Sewell strode on while a large group of Templar knights surrounded her. "Ugh! Almost." Captain Lance had cold sweat on his face. "Let me do it. Are you there or not?" On the square, a big group of Templar knights ran after Ezio and hacked at him. "Almost there. Almost." Sala said, "Get off. Let me do it, I know how to open it." Captain Lance moved away, and Sala tried her hand at the lock. Snap! It's stuck. Sala looked embarrassed. "Forget it." Captain Lance walked up. "Let me do it." Bang! 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 Boom! 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 They hacked at the door. "Assassins! There are assassins here! My goodness! Run! Run!" As if they poked a hornet's nest, the elves ran wildly while a group of people chased after them. "Can't outrun them! Fight! 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 Are you in position or not?" On the square, Elder Sewell ran while being chased by as many as 100 royal guards. "Where are you guys? Talk to me!" The other elves were busy hacking and slashing. "Och!" Elder Sewell screamed. On the other side, the elves panted. "We finally got rid of them. Can we continue sneaking up? Let's go." "No one discovered us. How come it feels different from the scene in the trailer? Let's go and protect Elder Sewell." "Ugh! Where's Elder Sewell?" Mr. Fang was watching Elder Sewell putting down her virtual reality headset and standing up in confusion. On her screen, Ezio had been hacked to death on the square. Mr. Fang almost fell to the ground while laughing. With a mug of cappuccino in his hand, Mr. Fang rubbed his belly, which was still hurting due to his uncontrollable laughter. Then, he watched while the elves began another round of assassination. Meanwhile, the assassins born on this continent had gained great improvements in all kinds of skills. At this moment, the excellent assassins such as Alina and Harrison had come to the end of the game. "How did they make this Apple of Eden?" a few people exclaimed. On the screen was the battle freeing Rome. Ezio activated the golden apple, and everything around him seemed to move in slow motion. The sphere emitting golden light suddenly shot out golden lightning energy, knocking down all the soldiers who were charging at him from all sides. At this last moment, the game was less difficult to play. As a godly artifact left by the first civilization, the powerful Apple of Eden had the ability to foresee the future. Surrounded by the Assassin Brotherhood and its allies, Caesar was soon defeated and captured. Caesar had once gotten the golden apple and seemed to know that he wouldn't be chained or die in others' hands. Sure enough, Caesar escaped on the same day that he was captured. With the power from the Apple of Eden, Ezio found him and tossed him down a cliff, leaving his fate to the heavens. Obviously, the heavens decided to let the cruel tyrant die. Ezio's foe finally ended his life in this place. After that, this master assassin decided to retire. In this place, he did the most glorious and the greatest things in his life and brought freedom to the people. Without a backward glance, Ezio followed the path of his ancestor Altair to find the truth hidden in the Apple of Eden, and the Apple of Eden was sealed inside a secret chamber near the Roman amphitheater. When Assassin's Creed Brotherhood came to the end, Alina felt emotional. As real assassins who had been looked down on simply because of their identity, people like Alina had different feelings about the game. Just a moment ago, she had experienced the most glorious moment in this master assassin's life in another world. What she had obtained wasn't great power but a spiritual inheritance. Her deep understanding of nothing is true, everything is permitted, and the powerful spirit shown in the game dispelled the darkness from her heart like a blazing torch. These assassins had been living in permanent darkness and couldn't reveal their true names and looks to people. Indeed, they were dark and despicable, and they could only sneak attack from darkness. Their lowly status in the world in turn darkened their mind and chilled their hearts. Although there were exaggerated parts in the negative rumors about assassins, not all of them were made-up stories. Since they had no faith or code of conduct to bind them, they were outlawed. But now, Alina thought of things differently. In the past, she didn't understand the true meaning of being an assassin, thinking that her job as an assassin was just taking missions and killing targets. But now, she realized that assassins could represent a spirit and a will, they could live gloriously like the assassin ancestors in the game. If they understood this and fought for their faith, they were still assassins even if they fought and killed their way to their targets using Muzu. She thought that maybe this was what Assassin's Creed tried to express. It was time to close for the night. Mr. Fang walked to the door and was about to lock up the shop. Then, he saw a bunch of flowers neatly placed before the door. To the great assassin pioneer Master Altair from an anonymous assassin. To the eternal eagle of Florence, Master Ezio from an anonymous assassin. On the Cloud Ocean Square outside Yuanyang City, cultivators came and went. Some young people including a few people of the Ultimate West Realm were standing on the edge of the square and looking down at the deep creek under the cliff. Ah, they leaped down. Then, they flew back up on sword energies and leaped down again. Ah, strange. How come I can't master this leap of faith? Tang Yu stared at the wall intently while yelling, "Eagle vision! Eagle vision! Open!" His eyes almost broke since he was staring so hard. What's wrong? Sia spoke the spiritual state language with an awkward accent, and she said, "How come I can't master it?" She looked frustrated. Meanwhile, lowly Zhang Xiaoyu was sitting on a couch in the shop with a mug of cappuccino in her hands. On the top of the coffee was the pattern of a pretty white rabbit. She also looked frustrated. On one hand, she was eager to sip the coffee as she was even drooling. But on the other hand, she just couldn't bear to eat this cute rabbit. Awoo! Beside her, the big white deer had gulped down the coffee and was almost done. For players of Dungeon Fighter Online, today was obviously another hopeful day. A man covered in bandages limped into the shop. Seeing the janitors doing the cleaning, he yelled, "Morning, homies! Damn it! Who are your homies?" The janitors had tears on their faces. "I say, little guy! You didn't bring Granddaddy to that war. Otherwise, we would have slaughtered them all." The godly swords began to babble again. Ignoring them, Gabriel chose a seat and entered the game, continuing his journey in the abyss. Items! Give me items! He instantly killed an abyss demon with a powerful skill, and his eyes became bloodshot. Nalan Hongyu used to practice sword techniques in the morning in his own place before coming to the shop. But lately, he had changed the practice venue to the open ground before the shop. Now, wearing a loose white robe, he stood in front of the shop with a sword in his hand. Meanwhile, Song Qingfeng was sitting on a couch in the shop. While eating instant noodles, he took out his new communication jade and recommended to Su Tianji sitting across from him, "Sister Su, this anime is good. This Naruto is super cool. I highly recommend it. It is not that good, and you can only unlock one episode per week." Dong Qingli also took out her new communication jade and said, "Look at Pokemon. These Pokemons are super cute. I wonder when the shop will award people with Pokemons." She looked expectant. In the half-city shop a black cloud held a mug of cappuccino in its arms. "Wow, so good," it lounged on a computer chair with joy and pleasure. "How can a smirk face emoji know what it tastes like?" Ruan Ning, the girl from next door who had turned into a full-time shop clerk, looked down at it. "Where did you get the money anyway?" On its screen was a live stream room named, Almighty Demon God Professional Technical Streamer. It had just won a match. "Ha ha ha, Thanks to noob player White Hands 66 goose eggs. Thanks to new player really can't plays 666 goose eggs. Ah ha ha ha. Thanks to smirk face emoji not funny 6666 goose eggs. Ugh. This name, it froze. Then, after checking its membership card, it was pleased that the money on his account had grown a bit. "Get me another bottle of iced red tea. This works." The people watching from behind all froze. At this moment, Mr. Fang was dazedly staring at the system interface. "You have a new task." Clearly, Mr. Fang had received a new task. "New task, Online communication in this world. Task content. Host, please promote the harmonious relationship between the old shops and the new shop. Task privilege. The right to release the legend of the sword and fairy. For host can achieve the first step by introducing the customers in the new shop to another culture. Task reward, 1 system gift bag, and 3 days of access to the game cultivation room. Mr. Fang's face twitched. As the owner of an internet cafe, he knew which games were good, but he had never heard that an internet cafe owner had such an responsibility on his job description. System, this goes beyond the responsibilities of an internet cafe owner, right? Mr. Fang didn't know what to say. The system replied, as an outstanding cross-continental internet club, it must have a smooth working internet and a harmonious online atmosphere. Fortunately, he had chosen a remote place with cute peace-loving elves and bright-looking knights who were obviously not in the same category as the people of the Judgment Godly Palace. Otherwise, the task would be quite difficult to complete. With the current customers in the new shop, Mr. Fang was quite confident that he could complete the task. While congratulating himself for his great vision, he began to consider how to do the task. Meanwhile, Mr. Luther. At this moment, Luther had returned to Grey Eagle City after his interrogation of the assassins. The next step was catching the assassins who were running free and finding clues to the 2 master assassins who had disrupted their big plans. Although the 2 failures had nothing to do with his competence, the Godly Palace still made him stay in Grey Eagle City to investigate, which meant that his status had become much lower compared to before. Damn it! Luther tightened his grip on the wine glass, shattering it instantly with the wine still in it. These damn assassins! According to our recent investigation, a place in Kanglan City seems to be protecting assassins. We almost got them last time but were stopped by these people. Besides, the knight said while lowering his voice, we found that the 2 so-called master assassins you want to find seem to be related to this shop. Shop? What does this shop do? Luther asked with chilly eyes. It seems to be a shop of cultivation mystic realms, the knight said. Those 2 master assassins are related to these mystic realms, but I still don't know who they really are. Cultivation mystic realms. Luther frowned. It would be easy for them to capture an ordinary person, but anyone who could run cultivation mystic realms wasn't ordinary. This shop seems to have a good reputation, the knight said, but I think that as a new workshop, its influence isn't as great as ours. If we stir up people against this shop, maybe, we don't need to lift a finger. Despite the lack of evidence to support this theory, most people believed it and took it as is. What kind of person do you think the shop owner is? On one leisurely morning, the elves sipped cappuccino and talked among themselves in low voices. Ah, the milky fragrance mingling with the pure herb scent. This is a delicious beverage made with pure natural ingredients. The elves looked intoxicated. It's said that it's a mixture of a bean powder and milk. I thought we knew all the plants in the world. They are called coffee beans, Sala told them. I wonder if it's a plant from the East Continent. I don't think so, the great assassin pioneer Altair doesn't look like a person from the East Continent. But we've never heard of places such as Rome or Florence on our continent, one elf said with a shrug. The humans here regarded the humans living in the East Continent almost in the same way as they regarded the elves and the dwarves who were other races. Living so far from them, the humans on the East Continent were even more mysterious than the rarely seen elves. After watching the war waged by the Judgment Godly Palace, they realized that the people from that continent were obviously of the same race as the people in the East Continent. After the war, they had a clearer impression of these people who were vague in their minds. They used mysterious and powerful magic spells and could fly while stepping on sword-shaped magic artifacts. They had excellent combat techniques and powerful magic weapons. They had dignified and elegant manners. For example, the white-clothed old man had discussed about the meaning of sword deo before the battle. They proved with action that all the descriptions about them from the churches and rumors were all lies that could be easily shattered. Do you think the shop owner has a magic item that can fly as well? At this moment, Mr. Fang was having his morning tea all by himself on a couch, not realizing that these people were talking about him. "Sir." While sipping her cappuccino, Sala ambled over and sat down next to Mr. Fang's lone figure before asking, "Do you have a mystic realm that features the specialties of your hometown?" After spending so much time in the shop, they had become quite familiar with the shop owner, even though this unyielding man never gave frequent customers any discounts. At this moment, Alina said, "You're from the East Continent, how come there is nothing with the style of the East Continent?" Obviously, she was curious about this new stuff. By now, she had played Assassin's Creed and Assassin's Creed Brotherhood twice and was challenging a higher difficulty level. Elder Sewell said, We've been out for a long time now. It's time to go back to the Silver Moon Forest. Can't we stay here a bit longer?" Sala exclaimed in alarm. "Of course not." Elder Sewell said solemnly, "I have things to do, and you have missions to finish." "Oh. Elder," Sala looked sulky, feeling like she hadn't been here long enough yet. She wished that she could live here. Despite her badgering, Elder Sewell was unmoved. Discouraged, Sala changed the subject and asked, "Sir, I asked you a question." Sitting next to her on the couch, Mr. Fang sipped his cappuccino and froze. "My hometown. Do you have such mystic realms?" Commander Elvin, who had been busy sipping tea, looked up subconsciously, curious about this distant and mysterious East Continent. "Are you talking about the next new mystic realm?" "Ugh! Do you really have one?" Sala asked immediately, "What does it look like?" "It's called the Legend of the Sword and Fairy." While his face twitched, Mr. Fang wondered how he could describe the game with words. "You'll know what it looks like after you try it." "Great." After playing 2 games of Assassin's Creed series and Resident Evil, Commander Elvin obviously had confidence in the quality of the cultivation mystic realms in this shop. People liked the mystic realms in this shop since they had complete stories which were deep and vivid enough to touch their hearts. "Elder Sewell, can we have a look of the new mystic realm before we return?" "Please." Sala quickly begged. Elder Sewell looked frustrated, and she budged a little. "Only one look, and then we'll leave. Can we play it for a while?" "No." Not sparing her a glance, Elder Sewell sounded very firm. Meanwhile, the news had spread to the players in the old shops. Everyone was talking about it in the Legend of the Sword and Fairy group chat, and QQ Sutianji asked, "The Legend of Sword and Fairy 4. Nalan Hungyu chimed in, "When will it be released?" Tang Yu said, F***CK? The 4th sequel of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy will be released. SIA shouted, "Buy! Buy! Buy! I'll buy it! I swear!" Gabriel said, crying face. "I shattered several weapons while reinforcing them. I hope the new game is not too expensive. I'm poor." He posted a meme of himself sleeping on a pile of hay with the illustration, "I wish I didn't reinforce the weapons to level 13. I'm starving for days now," Song Ching Feng said, smirking face. "Who photoshopped this photo?" "Awesome," Luo Piaoling said, "when you want to photoshop a picture, go to Xiaoyu. Do you guys know when The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 will be released?" At Mr. Fang. Meanwhile, many people in the new shop were also badgering Mr. Fang with the same question. "Still not released?" Sala was a bit disappointed. Remembering the trailer before the release of Assassin's Creed, she asked immediately, "Does it have a trailer?" She looked very hopeful. "This one doesn't have a trailer. I think it will be released in 1 week," Mr. Fang said calmly. Hearing his words, people were instantly unhappy. The customers in the old shops were also displeased when they heard the news in the group chat, "Can't you release it today? I demand it to be released today. Sir, can't you tell us something about it? Only a little will do." Sala was impatient, wondering how she could wait a week for it. "We're friends now, can't you do me a favor?" She tried to play soft with Mr. Fang. "Not today. Mr. Fang was unmoved. Well, this shop owner is stiff with his ways. Why? They felt like beating Mr. Fang. At this moment, even though the players in the old shops and the new shop hadn't met each other, they were now all glaring at Mr. Fang with furious eyes. The Dulin workshop had large groups of customers in each city. It had an even bigger group of customers in Kanglan City, a big city with advanced cultivation mystical realms. Not only mages and warriors from different places, but half of the aristocrats in the city often visited these cultivation mystical realms. At this moment, they were gathered together. One aristocrat said disdainfully, "I heard that someone tried to release a mystical realm about assassins. Is this shop still in business? I heard that the owner of the shop is a foreigner, he doesn't understand the rules in the city and wants to release a mystical realm with the style of the East Continent. What a joke! Will greatly promote the mystical realms of the Dulin workshop." Obviously, they hadn't seen the performance of this mystical realm in the elf clan. As loyal fans of the Dulin workshop, they would have found excuses for it even if they had seen the failure. It's just a small workshop, it's nothing compared with the Dulin workshop. I wonder why those powerful people of the Dulin workshop in Kanglan City suddenly mentioned this shop. I think it's because that small shop overestimated itself. Right after the Dulin workshop released the anti-assassination content, that small shop released the so-called assassin mystical realm. Pooh! Meanwhile, the representative of the Lava Workshop, a world-famous alchemy workshop, entered the Godly Palace in Kanglan City. The Lava Workshop was an alchemy workshop that used dwarf alchemy crafts. The dwarf clan had their own alchemy system, but different from the elf clan who kept their mystical realms to themselves, the dwarf clan also spread their cultivation mystical realms to different nations. With the most dependable crafts in the whole world, the dwarf clan had established representative offices in each country to run the mystical realms for them. This tall and thin aristocrat dressed in a formal suit was the representative of the Lava Workshop in Kanglan City. He said coldly, "Mr. Glass, you called us here for this small issue? What does an insignificant foreigner know about cultivation mystical realms? East Continent style." It must be noted that the dwarves had once released a dwarf-style mystical realm that they made with their most advanced techniques, but it ended up in complete failure. Even the world-famous dwarves had failed with their techniques, let alone a foreigner from nowhere. He said with a snicker, "This kid will probably go broke one day and return home with heavy debt. Just hear the name. The Legend of the Sword and Fairy." He sneered and asked, "What kind of name is this? No one would want to visit such a mystical realm." "Unfortunately, Mr. Leo," Glass said solemnly, "this kid got lucky and drew some aristocrats to his shop. With quite a few civilians visiting his shop regularly, he earns enough to keep the business open even though he has much fewer customers than the big workshops. But I think the situation will change soon because of you, me, and everyone else in the room," Glass said. "I think we must let them know what the good mystical realms look like." The two master assassins might be related to the shop, but Glass still thought it was a coincidence that their mystical realm failed that day. The main reason was that the knights in the mystical realm were caught off guard by the unusual moves of the elf who had excellent combat techniques and talent. He thought that it was just a loophole in the mystical realm, and the elves had taken advantage of it. After all, the figures in the fantasy world were not real people, and it was natural to have some small loopholes since it wasn't yet comparable to the real world. That was the only explanation. He would never believe that the elves obtained the victory because of that damn mystical realm in that shop. It was even less believable than the high tales made up by the bards. "Mr. Leo, if I'm right, the Lava Workshop is about to release a new mystical realm. The Dulin Workshop released no more than one cultivation mystical realm each year, so Glass held no hopes that it would release another mystical realm after such a short time. However, other workshops were different. The Lava Workshop was an alchemy workshop as good as the Dulin Workshop and had a new mystical realm that was going to be released soon, which made it a perfect partner for Glass. I wonder what content this new mystical realm of the Lava Workshop has. Leo nodded and said proudly, this new mystical realm doesn't only focus on cultivation, it also contains the dwarf clan's crafts in alchemy, blacksmithing, and manufacturing. It's a comprehensive mystical realm combining combat techniques and other skills. Excellent! Glass exclaimed, I'm surprised that the dwarves are generous enough to put in the skills that they have such pride in. I think those people will be stunned by this new mystical realm. Leo said with a smirk, I guess my employers got frightened when they heard that the Dulin workshop planned to build an unprecedented comprehensive mystical realm. It seems that their brains aren't all made of muscles. His words showed no respect for his employers. Do you want us to compete with that shop? Leo said in disdain, to be frank, if our cultivation mystical realm is released a few days earlier than theirs, I'm sure that no one will visit their cultivation mystical realm. Although Origin's Internet Club was not a small shop in Kanglan City and even had customers from the Elf clan, its competitors were huge organizations that provided mystical realms to nations all over the world. Mr. Leo, you're the person responsible for all the businesses in Kanglan City on behalf of the Lava Workshop. I believe in your abilities, Glass said with a smile. It has nothing to do with my abilities, Leo said while shaking his head, I'm just not interested in dealing with these minor beings. As if he had anticipated this situation, Glass clapped his hands, and a few knights soon carried out a chest of treasures. Then, Leo frowned and said with a smirk, I think we'll have a nice partnership. Meanwhile, Luther was playing with an exquisite wineglass in his hand. Hearing the news, he narrowed his eyes and murmured, now, we can eliminate both the assassins and the damn shop which dares to protect the assassins. The godly palace knights were still searching for assassins on the streets all over the city. However, these bold assassins were still playing games and watching trailers in the shop like usual. At this moment, the members of the Golden Griffin Knight Legion had also come into the shop to have their morning tea. The mercenaries including Big Sword Crete all came up subconsciously when they saw that someone was watching the new trailer. How come there are many people standing there? Elder Sewell came early today. After all, she didn't have to handle the affairs of the elf clan all day long while she was taking the young elves on a field trip. Ah! My goodness! Sala exclaimed, is this the trailer for the new mystical realm? Right. At this moment, the blue sky and white clouds on the screen condensed into a blue and white logo. Seeing many people watching from behind, Alina turned on the speakers. On her screen, a pretty figure stood under a fiery red phoenix flower tree. Her black and thick hair was pulled up in a bun behind her head. When the music rose, the figure in the white and blue clothes lifted her jade-like hand, and a white butterfly rested on her fingertip. When the music continued and got louder, Fang Qi recognized it to be the Azure Wave Sword tune. Under the dreamy fiery red phoenix flower tree, the elegant and pretty figure glanced back, fixing her wind-blown hair with her fingertips. Her jade-like and celestial look was stunning in this backward glance. My goodness! So beautiful! Even the beauty-loving elves widened their eyes. Wow! Sala exclaimed. The camera zoomed out to the distance as if someone was in a dream. While the wave-like clouds floated in the air, celestial mountains emerged. The Kunlun mountain was the tallest of all mountains in the area, and its peak penetrated the clouds. The tranquil and vast jade lake could be seen in the mountain, and a river winded at the foot of the mountain. It was a beautiful scene. My goodness! Is it the place where immortals live? The audience was stunned. Even Elder Sewell was stupefied. This mystical realm! This! At this moment, words appeared on the screen. The magnificent, unparalleled, and celestial Kunlun mountain is the most beautiful place between heaven and earth. The Qianghua faction has always excelled in sword creation. Their swords sweep across the mountains and rivers and eliminate demons and devils. The screen flashed, showing the scenes of ancient people making the Zai sword and the Wangshu sword, which stunned the heaven and earth and created phenomenons. In the grand palaces on the celestial mountains, celestial spiritual spells and demonic spells flashed at the same time. The magnificent temple of the sky stood at the peak of the mortal world and looked as if it were hovering in space and standing above the time-space continuum. The Wangshu sword and Zai sword swept up tremendous immortal force on the cloud platform, and the Oregon roared in the sky above Buzhu Mountain, bringing lightning bolts and strong gusts. TL note, Oregon, also known as Zilong and Torch Dragon, was a giant red solar dragon and god in Chinese mythology. It supposedly had a human's face and snake's body, created day and night by opening and closing its eyes, and created seasonal winds by breathing. The music turned even more high-pitched and passionate. At this moment, everyone seemed to choke with turbulent emotions inside. They almost roared in their minds. Isn't it a cultivation mystical realm? How can a cultivation mystical realm be so stunning? They were dumbstruck. What's this? Seeing the Oregon dragon on the screen, Sala froze in fear. The other elves behind her were also stupefied when they saw the mountain-like head and the huge body hidden in the clouds. Don't be afraid. A golden griffin knight said with forced calmness, it's just a virtual image, not a real thing. It is made for you to watch, there's nothing to be afraid of. Right. Right. While calming themselves and telling themselves not to be afraid, the elves continued to watch without blinking. At this moment, the passionate music slowed down while an ethereal music floated over from the misty white clouds until everything turned quiet. It felt like the previous scenes were not real and just a dream. With the melodious and haunting flute music, it felt like a permanent-looking ink painting was spread out quietly. At this moment, the elves and mercenaries didn't know if they were stunned or shocked. The elegant and beautiful music of immortal dreams rose while a green verdant forest appeared before them, bringing them back to that small wooden cottage in the mountains. The green stone steps winded up the mountainside while the waterfall crashed down with booming sounds, shooting pure water drops in all directions. The erhu music floated up with faint sadness while the gurgling creek flowed into the distance and got covered by white clouds. Then, the screen dimmed. For some reason, an indescribable emotion rose in their minds. They hadn't played this game yet but could feel that it contained a magnificent yet sad and touching story. Through the short scenes and music, they seemed to have experienced the most miraculous and magnificent adventure in their lives, and it would linger in their mind forever. They probably realized at this moment that the legend of the sword and fairy was totally different from Assassin's Creed. The former expressed a faith and a belief to them, and the latter seemed like a grand but melodious and gentle poem. This is how the new mystical realm looks like. The grand and vast mountains, rivers, and land, the glimpse at the huge beast hidden in the clouds, and the poetic scenery as if it were an ink painting. What a miraculous world! Unbelievable! The scenes in the trailer filled their minds. It's even grander than I imagined, Sala exclaimed. It's as magnificent as the great legends told in the books. This is the next mystical realm. Commander Elvin yelled, I think I need to calm down. Then, he took several deep breaths. I saw some people making two swords of different colors, Elf Captain Lance asked, are they making magic items? Is this mystical realm a comprehensive mystical realm containing forging and alchemy crafts? Something like that. It's called artifact making. Fang Qi remembered that the legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 had a complete forging system when he played it before he traveled through space and time. After all, the Qianghua faction was a big faction famous for its abilities in creating swords. At this moment, exclamations also filled the old shops. My goodness! Is this the legend of the Sword and Fairy 4? How come it doesn't look like Shu Mountain faction? Nalan Mingxiu seemed to notice something and swiftly said in the chat group, it seems to be Qianghua, Qianghua? I know it's Qianghua. Any problem with that? Song Qingfeng replied. Didn't you read the documents in Shu Mountain faction? Nalan Mingxiu said, Primeval Qianghua, the faction that had disappeared for unknown reasons. My goodness! There's records about this faction. F***ck, astonished face even Zhongwu emerged in the group chat with a curse. Gu Tingyun emerged as well. The legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 is telling the story about a primeval faction. After a long pause, she snapped back to reality. Looking calm and collected, she chuckled and said, "He he he. This new mystical realm is indeed good." However, she had complicated feelings inside. If her emotions were all displayed, there would be excitement, thrill, and shock, etc. How come humans are so powerful now? It doesn't feel right. Besides, have the cultivation mystical realms in the East continent progressed to this high of a level? We can try this mystical realm immediately. No. The shop owner still hasn't set the release date yet. Should I recommend it to other elders when I go back? No. I must try it first here. No. I have to return to the Silver Moon Forest soon. But I must try it before returning. So frustrating. With all kinds of thoughts flashing across her mind, she looked very uncertain and anxious. While Elder Sewell mulled over these thoughts, she glanced at the harmless-looking Mr. Fang suspiciously, wondering how this young shop owner had achieved such high-level alchemy skills. Is this shop a representative shop of the East Continent? Elder Sewell thought that it was quite possible. Many alchemy workshops put logos in their mystical realms. For example, the Dulin Workshop's mystical realms had an exquisite logo of sunlight and land upon entry, and the Lava Workshop had a logo of flames. She remembered the Ubisoft logo at the beginning of Assassin's Creed and wondered if the mystical realm were a product of the Ubisoft Workshop. What a strange name! Obviously, the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 also had a logo. It was in the colors of blue and white. Hiss! It seems that one shop can represent more than one workshop in the East Continent. Elder Sewell was puzzled. The people in that continent do things this way? Since Elder Sewell wasn't too familiar with humans, she gave up on the thought. After all, she would try it and then return home. However, Sir, when will you release this new mystical realm? Elder Sewell went straight to the point. Right. When are you going to release it? Hearing the question, everyone turned to Mr. Fang, afraid to miss the newest information about this game. These people wished that they could play it, cultivate in this mystical realm right now. Yes, we are here to cultivate. Regardless if we were learning how to fight like a berserker or how to achieve stealth and move like the assassins in Assassin's Creed, we were doing legitimate training and cultivation. At this thought, they justified their eagerness for the new mystical realm. However, Mr. Fang thought, games, you need to understand them before getting to play them. Otherwise, how can you understand the culture that is totally different from the one that you grew up in? The second trailer will be released in a couple of days, Mr. Fang said. Not only the knights and mercenaries, but even the elves had the urge to beat Mr. Fang. What did he say? Even the second trailer will take a few days to release, let alone the game. I heard that the Lava Workshop will release its new mystical realm. When Mr. Fang still refused to give them a release date, Sala threatened in a huff, if you release it later than them, we'll go and try their mystical realm instead. Different from elves who were cold to most humans and were only friendly toward a few, the hardy and meticulous dwarves were on friendly terms with all other races despite their occasional disheveled looks. The Lava Workshop had a large representative shop in this city. Humph! I'll see if this shop owner is afraid of the competition. Sala thought angrily hearing her words, the others' eyes brightened as well. However, then they saw Mr. Fang finishing his cappuccino and sitting down leisurely on his leather sofa-style computer chair. Okay. Everyone, this is all the content for today. Then, he entered Assassin's Creed. It was his third round of playing this game, and he intended to finish the whole process with 100% synchronization. He began to play proficiently. Instead of worrying about the competition, this guy is now playing the game as if nothing had happened. I can't bear it. Sala was beyond furious. She moved to Mr. Fang and then walked to the door intentionally. Sir, we're really going to Lave Workshop to experience its new mystical realm. At this moment, Mr. Fang had killed several Templar Knights in stealth. Sir. Sala was now standing at the door while cussing silently, how come this despicable shop owner isn't asking me to stay? Then, she looked back and saw the sequence results appearing on Mr. Fang's screen. It was the perfect 100% synchronization. Pucci. The others couldn't help laughing when they saw this elf blushing. Ms. Sala is so cute. The shop owner is too stiff and stubborn in his ways. We've been here for so long, why can't he make an exception for us once in a while? Yay! You guys are still laughing at me. Sala had the urge to run up to them and use Muzu like a berserker. Ah! I really want to try it, seeing the beautiful palaces in the clouds, the grand spiritual spells, and sword techniques, and the magnificent mountains and rivers, they were eager to enter this realm and play in it. Right now, they felt ticklish as if a kitten was scratching their minds. Mr. Fang said, you must be patient, there is a process. Otherwise, you'll feel befuddled when you play it. He looked solemn as if he were doing it for the sake of these lovely elves. However, the elves, knights, mercenaries, and assassins were unmoved, wishing that they could sleep in the shop until the despicable shop owner released this new game. Meanwhile, in the representative shop of the lava workshop, the tall and thin man named Leo had received the news. Mr. Leo, Glass said with a laugh, I believe that you've got a plan for this. It seems like this person is still oblivious of his imminent doom, he's still playing trailers. Leo chuckled and said, don't worry. He was sure that after his new mystical realm was released, this unknown small workshop would vanish from this market. Didn't you hear that the Judgment Godly Palace is searching and arresting assassins all over the world? Another mercenary whispered, I wonder what the assassins did to them. Obviously, the assassins enraged the people of the Godly Palace. I heard that they were humiliated by an assassin in the elf clan, I wonder if that's true, the mercenaries talked among themselves in low voices. It might be true, another person surmised, it's no wonder that they are making a big deal of it. I remember the Dulin workshop once boasting about bringing their new mystical realm into the elf clan, but they no longer talk about it anymore. Obviously, these mercenaries were not stupid and could figure out the rough edges of the whole situation from some clues. But I think, this is about it, they don't dare do anything outrageous here. A mercenary wearing dark brown leather armor glanced around and said, our Morning Light Empire is a free nation that allows people to believe anything they want, which is why we don't see anything outrageous here. You can go and have a look in the neighboring nation. It's a nation that believes in the God of Judgment, and the whole nation is helping them capture the assassins. There's no hiding place for assassins in that nation. I heard that they had captured many assassins and planned to execute them together. More. I heard that those assassins captured during the assassination attempt of Luther in Grey Eagle City will be executed too. At this moment, a few figures passed them, and they suddenly stopped. Harrison clenched his fists, and his shoulders shivered slightly. Calm down. They want to lure us over. Another assassin tightly grabbed onto him. I know, Harrison roared hoarsely, but they are our peers. Our brothers and sisters. Does the Brotherhood know about it? They should fight for freedom instead of being hung on the Godly Palace's scaffold. The low-profiled, middle-aged assassin who had grown up in a slum lost his usual composure. We should let more peers know about free will and the master assassins. I think they will like this place as we do. Harrison said, we'll move in stealth and perform the leap of faith together, it doesn't matter even if we're discovered. During our free time, we can drink cappuccino and talk about the stories in Assassin's Creed. He described his ideal life in a mild voice. Then, this middle-aged man's voice broke into a sob. I want them to know that we're not lowly and filthy mice, I want them to know that being an assassin is a great profession. Do you know? I have plans for them, they shouldn't be hung on the damn scaffold. Ugh! How come this shop is closed? While they talked, the mercenaries passed a shop selling alchemy items and found that it had been shut down. Isn't this the Merlin Workshop's alchemy item shop? How come it's closed? Obviously, this mercenary used to buy alchemy items from this shop. What happened? I wonder how the people in this shop had dealings with assassins. At this moment, another group of people passed the shop, pointing at it while they talked. I have no idea. But I heard that one assassin used a sword made by the Merlin Alchemy Workshop in an assassination attempt on some priests and even broke a priest's protective godly spell with this sword, the Rebel's Blade. The Rebel's Blade had once appeared in a rebellion in the Radiant Light Godly Nation, and this blade full of curses had once broken the godly spell barrier set up in the anti-major ray. It seems similar, but it obviously isn't as powerful as that legendary sword, another person said. But I heard that the owner of the shop hasn't been captured yet, so he probably escaped to another nation, which is why all the shops have been closed. It's a good shop though. Alas. Let's move on. Sir, is the trailer out today? Sir, it's still not released today. Almost every day, the elves came into the shop eagerly in anticipation. So did the mercenaries who lived in the city and the Knights of Golden Griffin Knight Legion. Obviously, today's trailer was more informative. In fact, Fang Qi was watching it too since this trailer wasn't introducing the game's background. Fang Qi knew those things too well. This trailer showed how to play the game and operate in the game. Obviously, the new version of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 not only increased the degree of freedom and openness but added extra content and details. For example, in The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 1, Li Xiaoao was the only main character, and players could only choose him to play the game. In The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3, there were two main characters which were Jing Tian and Su Chongqing. The story was told from their respective perspectives in alternation. However, when the players played as Jing Tian, they didn't know what Su Chongqing was doing and couldn't choose to play Su Chongqing either. The same happened when they played Su Chongqing. The system remake of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 was different. In the trailer, everyone watched Murong Ziying practicing sword techniques in the Qianghua faction and saw some scenes about his daily interaction with his nephew disciples. Those scenes happened before he met Yun Tianhe. The players could unlock the storyline of Murong Ziying and play the game from his perspective after playing as Yun Tianhe to a certain level. Besides, the trailer demonstrated how to play as Lu Mengli and Han Lingsha, whom could only be played by female players. Different from the original game in which the players could only choose one of the four characters to play, the trailer showed that in the new version, 4 players could enter multiplayer mode and control Yun Tianhe, Murong Ziying, Lu Mengli, and Han Lingsha respectively. However, in this mode, the players had to trigger different plots and interactions. In single-player mode, most of the events were triggered automatically and were as real as possible. Of course, if the 4 players controlled the 4 characters to go anywhere and do whatever they wanted, the plot of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 couldn't continue properly, which was why the system had improved the game mode while giving players a greater degree of freedom. It was a blessing to the players who liked to play the games together with their friends. This was an artifact-making skill for cultivators, and it wouldn't be available to players until Murong Ziying joined the team. After all, only Murong Ziying knew this skill among the 4 teammates. In the castle sitting in the highest position of the city, a middle-aged man dressed in an elegant aristocratic tuxedo was silently sitting behind a desk. His black tuxedo was exquisitely tailored, and his square face was wrinkled. However, his grey mustache gave him a genial and graceful look. At this moment, a figure had just left in a huff, slamming the door behind him. Indifferent, the man stood up and tended to the potted plants on the windowsill as if these flowers and plants were the center of his world. These were not precious flowers but looked like the wild pale yellow flowers that were blooming everywhere in the city. Of course, it might be that these flowers were seen everywhere since they were his favorite. Then, a woman wearing knight armor and with her blonde hair pulled up in a pigtail walked in. Oh? I don't remember that a junior knight can enter the city administrator's office at will, the middle-aged man said without turning his head. I also don't remember those promises that a man said to mother before he forgot them the next second. Helen didn't look a bit meek. The middle-aged man's calm expression turned stiff before he said in a deep voice, "You should call me father." Helen turned her head sideways, and stubbornness appeared on her pretty face. After a long pause, the middle-aged man seemed to give in first. He said mildly, "The messenger of the Judgment Godly Palace came to me a moment ago." What did he want? Seeming concerned, Helen turned her head back and asked the question. "Shut down," the middle-aged man said. "He asked me to shut down the shop with official force." Seeing Helen's intense gaze on him, he shook his head and said, "I refused." Seeming to sense her displeasure, he continued, "I didn't do it to help you. After all, our Morning Light Empire is a nation of free faith, and it's not right to allow the Judgment Godly Place to dominate others. This is not the Radiant Light Godly Nation, and they can't do whatever they want in this place. It's your decision, don't expect gratitude from me." Helen opened the door and walked out. When one of her feet was outside the door, she added, "That damn shop owner seems powerful, I don't think he needs anyone's help." "Okay." Looking at Helen who was walking away, the middle-aged man shook his head and chuckled. "Damn it! He just married into power, he's just a stupid lowly ant. What is he without the Himia family? What right does he have to refuse me?" A vicious roar sounded in the godly palace, it came from Glass. "We have other plans." At this moment, the red-robed senior priest walked over. "Anyway, we must deal with the assassins first. Without assassins, that shop's assassin mystical realm will have no reason to exist. Believe me, that shop owner is only an ignorant alchemist seeking his death. Anything is void before the force given by the Almighty God. He will end up like the alchemist named Merlin from the Stan Kingdom." At the mentioning those lofty existences, he sounded extremely reverent. Glass asked, "When will the assassins be executed?" 2 to 3 weeks later. "So long?" Glass asked in surprise. "Be patient," the red-robed senior priest said, "we set up a great trap for them under the direction of Saint Dolan. We'll give the assassins more time to come and rescue the prisoners. Of course. This way, we'll capture all these damn assassins." Glass sneered, "They probably don't know. We must reserve many things and not show them to the public. For example, they didn't put every anti-assassination skill in their newly released mystical realm." The red-robed senior priest said in a chilly voice, "If they think that those skills are all that we have, then they must pray to their great predecessor Altair to protect them in hell. Ha ha ha. Of course. We'll have a real battle instead of a practice." Laughter sounded in the palace. Mr. Fang got up quite early this morning. It could be that the legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 would be finally released today, or it could just be that it was a day with nice weather. Anyway, Mr. Fang walked downstairs before the opening time. Used to Mr. Fang's punctuality since he always opened the shop on time, no customers came to the shop at this hour. It was quiet in the shop. After opening the door, Mr. Fang sat down on a couch with his breakfast, a bowl of instant noodles and a sausage. At this moment, a handsome young man who looked to be in his 20s stopped at the door. He was wearing a white mage robe with blue edges and a pointy mage hat. Travel fatigued, he paused for a while outside the door before walking in. At first glance, this man looked very young, but his eyes appeared as deep as the starry night sky. Also, he moved with a maturity and confidence that didn't belong to a young man. "Sir, you run Cultivation Mystical Realms?" He looked around the shop in surprise. Waiting for the instant noodles to be ready, Mr. Fang drank a mouthful of Sprite and nodded casually. "Your shop has little business," this young man smiled as if he was trying to decide on what to say. After a while, he continued, "I think you need some help, maybe some guidance to success." "A guidance to success?" Mr. Fang looked at him in surprise. "Yes. The young mage who appeared to be in his 20s said, "I think you're in luck, young man. With my help, your shop will be popular very soon." While being stunned, Fang Qi carefully studied the customer before him. While he was in a daze, the young man took out a magic staff from his inner pocket as if he intended to add to his credibility and demonstrate something to convince Fang Qi. He looked around and outside the door. After making sure that no one else was watching, he took out a stone and waved his magic staff, saying, "Do you see this stone? I'll transform it into a magic crystal." After pausing for a while, Mr. Fang seemed to finally understand, and he said, "I got it." Of course I am." While saying that, he thought, "Now you know that I'm a great alchemist." "You're a scammer, right?" Mr. Fang said. "Pu." This young man almost dropped to the ground. "What? I'm Merlin, a lofty level 9 mage. And you, a young shop owner, dare to call me a scammer? Do I look like a scammer? You will miss an opportunity to become rich." I pushed 2 magic crystals into his hand, now he can go and perform in another shop. Clank! With 2 low-level magic crystals in his hand, the supreme level 9 mage and master alchemist found that the door closed in his face before he could understand the situation. This situation is strange. Seeing a grand alchemist who can turn rocks into magic crystals, the owner of this small shop with little business was not even a little tempted. With his great skills in alchemy and magic spells, he was welcomed in every nation as an VIP. He could make a pile of low-level cultivation mystical realms that were operated by a small shop like this one. Merlin stood at the door with a dark expression. Forget it. He had planned to help this shop grow popular, and he was sure that it would be full within 3 months and be known all over Kanglan City in 1 year. With my alchemy and magic spell knowledge, this little shop owner will be terrified. During the process, he would have a hiding place for himself. But this shop owner just refused such a great opportunity. A gold mine. Do you know what you've missed? A big opportunity to get rich quickly. Even he felt anxious and pitiful for the shop owner. Just when he was about to leave, something flashed in his peripheral. He turned around and saw a big group of knights dressed in luxurious armor and riding on precious mounts while moving toward him slowly. So many knights! Looking at the golden griffin badges on their chests, he knew that they were high-level knights. Was my identity exposed? No. This nation protects people's freedom of religious beliefs. When did the Judgment Godly Palace obtain such great influence in this place? While he was hesitating if he should make a move, the knights made a turn and passed him. Then, they all stopped and dismounted from their precious mounts. All these knights swarmed into the shop behind him. "Sir! Is the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 released today?" "Sir! You promised that the new mystical realm would be released today. Is it released or not?" While Merlin gaped at the knights and wondered what was going on, a big group of elves hurried toward the shop. Elder Sewell was determined to play the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 today. She had waited so long. They wouldn't return to the Silver Moon Forest until they played it. In a daze, Merlin turned his head and looked at them. When did a human city have so many elves? There is even an elf elder among them. While he was wondering about the situation, a large group of mercenaries and mages swarmed over as well. My goodness! He felt incredulous. They seemed to be talking about a mystical realm. What? The mystical realm in this shop is so popular. This great alchemist who was also a mage was at a loss for words. Do you guys know what a truly great mystical realm looks like? You all swarmed into this small shop and left me, a lofty existence and a great alchemist master, outside. Suddenly, a thought dawned on him. Is this shop owner so sure of his own alchemy skills that my skills are beneath his level, and he doesn't want to bother with me? If the shop owner were just an ignorant ordinary person, he would just laugh it off. But now, he found that the situation was too outrageous to be ignored. He strode back into the shop and shouted, "Sir, let me try that mystical realm too. After waiting in line for a while, Merlin finally got to activate the mystical realm named the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4. Is this cultivation mystical realm any different from all the others that I have played? Doubting its quality, he found a seat and entered the game. At this moment, the players in the old shops had eagerly entered the game. In the new shop, the most popular game was still Assassin's Creed, and almost every customer played it. Even though The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 was released today, many people continued playing Assassin's Creed while they waited to see the effects of the new game. But in the old shops, the situation was different. The Assassin's Creed series was indeed good and had many fans, but The Legend of the Sword and Fairy series was among the hottest games. Its huge group of fans instantly ignited the atmosphere in the shops. Some players couldn't come to the shops every day due to their busy schedules. After all, the shops were here and wouldn't move away. But today, even the ancient family masters in the spiritual state put aside their daily business and came to the shop. After all, The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 was released today, and they must show their support. By now, the old shops had been divided into many zones with space folding technology, but they were still crammed with customers today. The Zhuhua City shop was even busier. Many civilian players who didn't have membership cards almost broke the counter. Calm down. Calm down, everyone. While waving his folding fan, Xiao Yulf sweated profusely as he said, I promise you that everyone can play The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 today. Those who are waiting can go to the lounge area to take a break and watch the live streams, which will help you play the game better when it's your turn, right? In a while, the big streamers will play the game in their live stream rooms. Right now, the Zhuhua City shop was being managed by two senior clerks, Xiao Yulv and Yuz Highway. Yuz Highway also yelled, anyone who doesn't have a seat can go and watch the live streams first. Our popular streamer, New Snow, will give us a live stream. I wonder what amazing plays New Snow will show us today. Everyone, please go and support her. I heard that the big streamers of Dungeon Fighter Online such as Rosenrain and Zhu Yangxiao will stream The Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 too. Xiao Yulf said, I'm sure that their live streams will be excellent. Don't miss these shows. By the way, our sister Su Tianji, will put the whole process on the live stream too. So many people doing live streams. Really? Rosenrain hasn't done live streams for a long time, right? I want to watch New Snow's live stream. Let's go and watch Elder Sue's live stream. Maybe we can see her land on her face when using the leap of faith again. Sitting near the counter, Su Tianji put down her virtual reality headset and looked back. She seemed to hear some strange words about her. Seeing that there were no seats available, many people went to watch the live stream. Of course, some people just watched while standing behind the computers. For example, Su Tianji and Nalan Mingxiu now each had a large group of people standing behind them. My goodness! Upon entering the game, Merlin had the feeling that this was a grand production. While scratching his head, he wondered, this is... When did the cultivation mystic realms of this city advance to this high of a level? If a small workshop in this city can reach this high of a level, then I, a level 9 alchemist, probably can only be a little clerk in such a shop to survive. How can it be? Astonished, he began the new game. The elves and members of the Night Legion had also entered the game. However, the assassins including Alina and Harrison didn't have time to play this game yet since they put all their time on practicing the assassination skills in Assassin's Creed. However, they were still curious about this new game. Right now, they stood behind the elves and watched them play with bowls of instant noodles in their hands. Oh! Is this the Immortal Realm? Commander Elvin had just clicked on New Beginning when he was driven into the ancient mirror by a powerful force. The mirror fluttered like the surface of a lake, and he found that he was inside the world in the ancient mirror. The music is so good. The art-loving elves found the melodious flute tune and the low and sad erhu notes harmonious and beautiful like flowing water and breezes in nature, even though they didn't know the names of the instruments. Are they the musical instruments from the East continent? One of them sounds like a fipple flute. Obviously, Elder Sewell was a music lover. She could play beautiful music with a leaf from the Silver Moon Forest. I wonder what instrument this is. I want to try it, everything looks so real. While flying through the ocean of clouds into the immortal world behind the white clouds, Merlin was stunned to his core. As a supreme-level mage, he had experienced all the things in the world that most people could never experience. However, he had never heard about any other cultivation mystic realm that could be this real. As a master alchemist, he knew how difficult it was to achieve this level of realness. Perhaps the East continent had achieved a great breakthrough only in this one area. He thought as he continued the game. Grand and beautiful buildings and palaces stood in the immortal mountains. When the players looked down, they saw many disciples wearing blue and white daist robes and standing on a platform that was surrounded by faint mist and guarded by auspicious beasts. From the distance, the disciples looked like troops that were in compact formations. A huge lotus-shaped platform made of green and white jade hovered in the sky. Two ethereal voices came from the platform while two immortal swords, Wangshu and Zai, emitted bright immortal light. With spiritual essence flowing inside, the two immortal swords were engulfed by orange-red flame-like light and icy blue frost-like light respectively. This is the scene shown in the trailer. Seeing this familiar scene, the elves almost leaped up in excitement. I see this too. Sitting across from them, Mercenary Crete yelled in elation as well. The two swords came together, and a tremendous streak of spiritual essence traveled through the center of the cloud platform into the array pattern in the center of the stone platform surrounded by lotus flowers. Immediately, two dazzling sword beams shot up into the sky. The whole sky seemed to be pierced open, revealing a magical, dreamlike world. Are they mages of the East continent? Obviously, there were many things that the players didn't understand. However, this gave them a sense of mystery and didn't hinder the gaming experience. Subconsciously, they yelled in excitement, "Oh! Elf God Almighty!" Elder Sewell was also stunned by this scene. What am I looking at? Don't be afraid. It's just a mystic realm. A fantasy world for us to watch, a few golden griffin knights who were less sensitive hurried to explain. At this moment, Zhu Yangziao started his live stream in the old shop. While recovering from his shock, he stroked his short hair and said, "As you can see, this game is really awesome. Considering the high quality of the two previous games of this series, I suggest you guys try it if you are still hesitating." At this moment, Nalan Mingxia was obviously calmer than the others in her live stream. That's why I call the Legend of Sword and Fairy series the most anticipated work. They are exciting at the very beginning. I have to take a break and eat some potato chips to calm down. Aoo. Then, she stuffed some potato chips into her mouth. Gongzi Xiao. At this moment, Mu Donglei was sitting on a couch, not able to find a seat since he was late. I heard that you are very familiar with these live streams. Can you recommend one to me? Of course. Obviously, Xiao Yulv was well informed in this area. According to my observation of their daily live streams, I divide them into several big categories. If you want to watch excellent details, granular control, and ultimate plays, you can watch the live streams hosted by Rosen Rain, Lord Nalan, Almighty Demonic God, and Ms. Sprite. As everyone know, Almighty Demonic God is also called Almighty Smirking Face Emoji, and Rosen Rain usually works together with a dark-faced man in her live streams. However, they are all ultimate professionals and have great technical foundation. It is not useful to low-level players since ordinary people can't copy their plays, Xiao Yulv said with great knowledge, so, I usually watch Zhu Yangziao and Nu Snow's live streams since those players are easy to copy. Xiaoyu has a very cute style and good skills. You can watch her live stream if you like, but she doesn't live stream often. The live stream of hardworking Fairy Lu is quite interesting too. These are streamers who I watch quite often, Xiao Yulv said, Besides, there are streamers such as the King of Rangers and Mad Butcher. They have good skills, but I don't watch them often. Mu Donglei said curiously, how come you didn't mention Elder Su, Gongzi Xiao? She's a idol-style streamer, Xiao Yulv whispered, don't tell anyone I said that. Mu Donglei's face twitched as he thought, this. Is it really proper to mock Elder Su this way? The ethereal figures on the mountaintop among the clouds moved, and the sharp sword beams and chilly and alluring demonic spells formed a grand battle between immortals and demons. The elves and mercenaries gaped at the scene with shock and awe on their faces. The knights who were used to seeing many similar battles found that even a story in the game could be so grand and majestic. Although they didn't understand it yet, the players felt awestruck. Ugh! That's all. While they were enjoying it, the scene suddenly dimmed before them. That's the end. Who won the battle anyway? They had seen the moment when Chan Yu faked defeat and then sneak attacked the Taking Spiritual Master. TL note, Taking Spiritual Master is also known as the Grand Pure One. What's happening? Damn it! The scum shop owner did it again. We are left hanging again. Mr. Fang told them that it wasn't his fault, and he thought, the game is created soft star, why are you blaming it on me? He looked sulky. After the opening cinematics, the game started. Oh! This person who looks to be a faction chief was killed by the demon. In her live stream room, Su Tianji finished watching the cinematics while eating potato chips. She explained the scenes while watching it, looking quite professional. Then, a crude wooden house appeared in everyone's eyes. Yun Tianking's memorial tablet was placed on the table in the house, and smoke floated from the sandalwood incense sticks. Beside the table was a small boar that had been tied up for sacrifice. How come this person looks like a savage? On the screen was a good-looking young man with messy hair. With animal fur draped on his shoulders, the young man was wearing crude cotton clothes, and he kneeled before the memorial tablet with a dull expression. Dad, I know I'm in the wrong. Last night, the boar's loud screams kept me up for most of the night, which is why I'm late for burning the incense sticks for you this morning. Spring passed already, so I don't know why it's screaming so much. The small boar that was tied on the side honked. Dad told me to burn 3 incense sticks for him in the morning and night. It seemed like he was talking to the boar. You don't know how terrifying he looked when he got angry. Is he the main character? Su Tianji ate another potato chip and said, how come he looks so dull? After all, the main characters in the Legend of Sword and Fairy 1 and 3 are all clever, but this guy. Su Tianji touched her head and thought, how come he looks as dull as a cattle? Meanwhile, in the new shop Mage Merlin was also puzzled. How come this mystical realm is different from all the others that I had seen? The elves, knights, and mercenaries had also come to this part. Then, they heard low roars of a boar outside the door. Obviously, the young man drew out the big boar after catching the small one. Great! I captured a boar, and another came for free. Pleased, Yun Tianhe ran out the door. Now, it was time for the players to control the main character. Can we use both the bow and sword? Seeing Yun Tianhe taking out his bow, the elves who were archery masters were eager to try. In the room, there was also a rusty thin sword. It looked old and wasn't well maintained. Can we use these 2 weapons? Alina and the other assassins who were watching from behind looked eager. After all, bows and swords were common weapons used in Assassin's Creed. I wonder how it feels to use these weapons. I saw this scene in the trailer. The player's spawn place was on Greenbird Peak, which was covered by giant ancient trees that looked like screens. Behind the wooden house was a huge waterfall with a stone bridge connecting the banks of the river beneath the waterfall. Before the house was an ancient path made of green stones. Further away, there was a tall cliff. Looking over, there was the misty and beautiful scenery. All the grass and trees in this place looked natural. For the elves, this place had a type of beauty different from the kind that they were used to seeing. Oh! I thought Moonlight Lake and Silver Moon Forest was the most beautiful place that I've seen. Sala's pretty eyes looked at the picturesque Greenbird Peak in pleasant surprise. So beautiful. For elves who loved art and nature, they would never miss such an opportunity to enjoy the rare natural beauty of this place. As for the task and plot, they would think about them later. Yes, they were the legendary fans of beautiful scenery. They must enjoy the natural beauty first. The female boar had run into the Rock Creek cave in which Yuan Tianhe's father's tomb was located, but these elves ignored it and just ran around Greenbird Peak, wishing to take screenshots of each place they went. As for the Golden Griffin Knights and Mage Merlin, they liked the scenery as well, but they weren't as crazy over it as the elves. Is this just a low-level mystical realm used to practice skills? Merlin was puzzled. According to the previous grand battle they had just watched, this mystical realm should be a high-level one. How come the strange savage that I'm controlling only has a little bit of strength in his body? Were those prior images just a bluff? Helen had come to this part too. In her eyes, the main character was totally different from the characters in other games, and he was extremely funny. Ha ha ha. This guy, how did he mistake a girl for a big wild boar? He thinks that she's a demon boar, so hilarious. In the cave that appeared to be covered by ice crystals and ebony jade, Helen watched the conversation between this young man and a girl, and she almost spewed out iced red tea with laughter. Hiss! What's this? At this moment, in Rock Creek Cave, an inhuman voice sounded. Summoning storms and thunder with a whisper. Reaching heaven and earth and entering the netherworld. Changing at will into anything I like. She looked over and saw a faint white shadow appearing before her. It had a body but no feet, looking like a spirit or a ghost with white flames burning around its body. Is it a ghost? She looked shocked. As an aristocrat knight born and raised in Kanglan City, she had never seen such things before. I'm Kuei Zhao. I'm guarding this place at my master's order, and I will kill any trespassers. My goodness! Look! What's this thing? Helen's alarming shout drew the eyes of all the people around her. Soon, they saw the white talisman spirit which looked like an immortal. Helen's sword techniques were good, but when she struck her sword at this thing, she found that her blade went through the body of the talisman spirit. This is an alchemy creature. Merlin froze and then yelled, "This must be an alchemy creature, a high-level one too. It is a high-level alchemy creature immune to damage. Isn't this a basic mystical realm? How come it has such things? Besides, is this the alchemy of the East Continent? Their skills have advanced to such a high level. Hearing Helen's scream, everyone around her looked over at the horrifying talisman spirit on her screen, wondering if she would die soon. At this critical moment in the game, Helen was oblivious of her surroundings. Finding that she could move again, she began to run while pulling Han Lingsha with her. Ugh! Han Lingsha looked puzzled, and she asked, "Didn't you say that nothing is as scary as your dad?" While her face twitched, Helen looked embarrassed and said, "Girl, please stop talking. I'm protecting you right now." Osh! Kuei Zhao summoned two ordinary talisman spirits to sweep toward them swiftly as a mass of white mist with faint spiritual light. Gusts howled and sword energies whistled around them. It was obvious that with their speed, they couldn't come out of Rock Creek Cave alive under Kuei Zhao's spiritual spells. They had no choice but to fight. With the inhumane training from Assassin's Creed, Helen used the little strength in her body and controlled Yuan Tianhe to stop. At this moment, Yuan Tianhe turned and dodged Kuei Zhao's attack at the last moment while stabbing his sword into Kuei Zhao's body. She got it. Many people's eyes brightened when they saw that Kuei Zhao didn't dodge. The sword pierced into its vital point. If Helen were in Assassin's Creed, this would be a perfect counterattack. However, everyone saw the long sword piercing through Kuei Zhao's body in the next moment, inflicting no damage to the creature. Meanwhile, Yuan Tianhe felt an excruciating pain all over him as Kuei Zhao went through his body. Different from the original version, the talisman spirits had no solid forms in the system version, and their ordinary attacks could do damage to the player's souls. I told you. Merlin said while watching the scene, this one is absolutely an alchemy creature. A high-level alchemy creature who is immune to damage and can cast spiritual spells. On the screen, Yuan Tianhe, who was under Helen's control, had been severely injured, and Han Lingsha pulled him to flee. Meanwhile, the audience looked toward Merlin and asked, "You know about this creature?" Of course. Merlin was sure of himself. This alchemy creature must be a powerful monster created to guard a tomb or something. Ugh! The mercenaries, knights, and elves looked at the young man curiously. They thought, he isn't old. Is he? Are you an alchemist? Of course. Merlin was touched by the fact that he was recognized. He thought, these elves sure know what is going on. Do you know how to deal with these creatures? Sala and the other young elves asked expectantly. I can if I encounter them. After all, I'm a master alchemist, Merlin said calmly and thought, I'm finally being recognized and valued. I'll see if the damn shop owner dares to treat me as a scammer again. Then, Alina pointed at the two people running for their lives on the screen and asked, "Can you help them?" No. Merlin shook his head with absolute certainty. Then, you're useless. Not only Alina, but the elves around Merlin looked at him in disdain. You little girls? Don't you have any respect for your seniors and compassion for juniors? With a dark expression, Merlin pointed at the screen and said, in this situation, even a supreme level 9 master can't do anything about it. He just told them the facts. The moment he said it, Han Lingsha said in the screen, "No. We'll both die here if we keep this up. We must use whatever method we can think of, regardless of how far-fetched they may seem. Hey! Calm down and listen to my incantation. We'll deal with it with an immortal spell." Everyone froze at her words. What is going on? Deo combines heaven, earth, and people to achieve essence. Heaven circulates with essence, earth moves with essence, Deist spells sense everything through essences. What's this thing? Everyone was stupefied. Are you two young people who don't know anything? How come you suddenly took out such advanced things? They didn't understand a single sentence, but they felt like the incantation was extremely profound and lofty. Merlin, who had declared that no one could find a solution to this situation, was also stupefied. With his high-level skills in spiritual spells, he could sense the power contained in the mysterious words even though they came from another system which was totally different from his. Smooth water penetrates all holes, burning flames burn all things, fierce lightning shatters all tough materials, sweeping winds travel through all barriers, and nurturing earth merges all things. Ah! The moment Han Lingsha finished chanting, Helen yelled, "I seem to have mastered this spiritual spell." What? Merlin yelled in astonishment. How is this possible? Han Lingsha had just taught Yuan Tianhe the general guideline of the 5 spiritual immortal spells. All the spells later in the game had to be derived and learned from this general guideline. This was why the players could comprehend all kinds of advanced immortal spells later. The system version of the game gave the players a greater degree of freedom in this area. For example, these spells would be comprehended by players with their own abilities and experience, which meant that different players would obtain different understandings and different things. For example, Helen circulated the spiritual essence in her body with the incantation after screaming. Then, she lightly placed her left palm on the sword blade and yelled in a low voice, "Lightning spell." A streak of faint lightning energy appeared on the blade the moment she uttered the incantation. The sword in Yuan Tianhe's hand emitted a wave of pale blue light. With the same basic incantation and the same lightning spell, different people would use it in different ways after they understood it from the spiritual spell general guideline. However, Helen was thrilled. With a clear yell, she went into battle again. While the lightning bolts flashed on her sword, 3 talisman spirits roared together and swept the air in the cave into howling gusts, which in turn transformed into destructive hurricanes. The sword skills that the players had learned in Assassin's Creed were efficient skills to kill enemies, but the targets were all humans. Since talisman spirits didn't have vital organs, these skills were not enough to deal with them. Helen's fierce attacks afflicted no damage on the talisman spirits. In contrast, Yuan Tianhe, who was under Helen's control, received many wounds. Still, Helen fought hard and killed 1 talisman spirit, giving the audience a glimpse of hope of turning the tables. Of course, it was only a small hope. "This is good," Helen said excitedly. "I think I can pass this one if I become more proficient with this spiritual spell." While being cautious, she ducked the attacks and tried to find a chance to fight back. "Can we learn spiritual spells this way?" Merlin froze. Although the players were placed in a weird world, everything felt real, with a vivid storyline running through the whole game while they were forced to understand and learn spiritual spells under the pressure of life or death situations. In this situation, if you don't win, you'll die. So, the people cultivating in this mystical realm must focus all their attention on the stuff they need to learn and thus achieve a level of learning efficiency at least twice as much compared to the usual situations. At this moment, Helen had totally merged herself with the character in the game. This way, one can obtain more understanding efficiently. More importantly, smooth water penetrates all holes, burning flames burn all things, fierce lightning shatters all tough materials. Merlin murmured the words in an awkward accent. This language was stored in Yuan Tianhe's memory, and it wasn't difficult for this supreme mage to learn a new language. The deep and mysterious general guideline immediately drew his attention. Other than Merlin, the elf Elder Sewell and the Knights of the Golden Griffin Knight Legion had also resumed the game. The mages were all amazed. "Are these spiritual spells from the East Continent? Miraculous!" On the screen, the second talisman spirit dropped to the ground under the sword attacks engulfed by lightning bolts. However, what happened next went beyond the player's imagination. Violent whines filled the Rock Creek cave. It seemed that Kuei Zhao had just begun using its true power. On the screen, the audience saw that Han Lingsha and Yuan Tianhe couldn't even get close to the talisman spirit. So powerful, the gusts instantly sent them flying like cannonballs. The essence and spirit in Yuan Tianhe's body had almost run out. At this moment, the Wangshu sword in Yuan Tianhe's hand suddenly lit up. Kuei Zhao finally stopped its attacks and bowed while saying, "Wangshu? It's you, Master." "Master." The audience, who had thought that the main character was dull and weak, were stupefied. After all the dangers they experienced, the players found out that this powerful alchemy creature was a subordinate of this sword. "It turns out that this savage is quite powerful," Alina whispered. "No. It's his father who's powerful," Merlin commented. "He must be a very powerful alchemist. Also, this sword must be a very powerful magic item." On this continent, which had different knowledge and cultures, it was natural for the people to use the terms such as alchemist and magic items to describe what they saw. At this point, the players began to have a general idea about this game. "I think I get it. This is a story about a great alchemist and his son," Merlin commented solemnly. "I can't wait to see if someone is going to teach magical alchemy skills in the game." Mr. Fang put his hand on his forehead. In fact, before Fang Qi traveled through time and space, he had met many foreign friends who didn't know the difference between Wuxia and Xiangxia. However, this didn't dampen their enthusiasm for the games. Despite their many misunderstandings, these new players enjoyed the game very much. "I'm going to fight this powerful alchemy creature now," Elf Girl Sala said eagerly. "Pray for me. Will it submit to me after I show this powerful sword to it?" "Oh! Haha! We can have such a shortcut. Let me try it." In the system version, despite the greater degree of freedom, the players still had to do certain things such as learning spiritual spells. The players couldn't expect Kuei Zhao to submit to them the moment that they took out the Wangshu sword. While retaining its high degree of freedom, the system had used all kinds of methods to avoid certain situations. In fact, the players had only one sword, which was Wangshu, from the very beginning. Helen had battled Kuei Zhao with Wangshu, but the latter showed no reaction to the sword at that time. This was an issue with the activation and awakening of power in the Wangshu sword. In the original version, the sword woke up the moment Yuan Tianhe encountered Han Lingsha, the destined person. However, in the system version, the sword had just been activated once by accident. If the players wanted to activate it again before Kuei Zhao, they must know how to use the force of the spells. Right now, Yuan Tianhe only had one sword at his disposal, which meant that his spiritual spell had to travel into the body of the sword and meet the requirement for activation. So, it was impossible to skip the learning of the spiritual spell. At this moment, Kuei Zhao vanished while a yellow talisman paper floated down from the air. Oh! This is miraculous! Elves watched the scene in amazement. They couldn't believe that such a powerful monster actually. It just turned into a piece of paper. This is, Merlin pointed at the talisman paper on the screen and said, this must be a special spiritual spell scroll. Yeah, it must be. Amazing! The players led by the elves exclaimed in surprise. In their eyes, this world was full of natural beauty that paused their steps and also miracles they had never seen before. For them, this was a place full of surprises. Yes, surprises were everywhere. Before they knew it, they merged into the game with their own understanding. Chapter 648 Monsters at Nest Lake, the Sword Immortal emerges. She seems to be looking for sword immortals. She said that the true sword immortals can control swords with essence and travel 1,000 kilometers in one breath. They sound powerful. I would like to see such a sword immortal too, Sala said excitedly. It would feel great to fly while standing on a sword. It seems that Yuan Tianhe's parents are sword immortals. Yay! Then, will Yuan Tianhe become a sword immortal too? While playing the game, the elves talked animatedly with the knights and mercenaries. Of course, some people were not interested in this idea. For example, Commander Elvin said, our golden griffins are our lifelong battle companions. Flying on swords sounds cool, but the honor of knights doesn't allow us to abandon our battle companions. I think we must check out something else. Haha! Yuan Tianhe is so silly. I wonder how his father taught him. I'd rather learn some self-defense sword skills to kill wild boars. He's funny. Remembering how Yuan Tianhe mistook Han Lingsha as a demon boar, Alina became amused as well. Haha! I think this guy has dealt with demon boars all his life. He knows nothing but wild boars or demon boars. This Lingsha keeps talking about looking for treasures and legends. Is she a treasure hunter? Some elves asked curiously. It's likely, ha ha ha. I like this kid, Yuan Tianhe. Harrison laughed as well. He is not stupid but very honest. After all, he had to deal with wild beasts to survive from a very young age. The story seemed to drive some of the worries from his mind. The enemies that the assassins would face were too powerful. Without thinking, they were certain that a big trap would wait for them when they go to try to rescue their old peers. Only in such moments could they alleviate a portion of the mountain-like pressure that they were feeling. Let's watch some more before we go and train in the virtual reality mode. Wow! I never knew that a tomb chamber could be so beautiful. The tomb chamber in the Rock Creek cave was covered in thick ebony ice, and the sparkling lights inside the tomb chamber flew over and gathered around the blazing Wangshu sword in Yuan Tianhe's hand. So beautiful! To see the beautiful tomb chamber, the elves had hurried into this place too. Obviously, nothing could stop the steps of the fans of natural beauty. Yuan Tianhe waved his hand casually. Wherever the sword energy went, the ebony ice and walls in the tomb chamber were all cut into two. Then, the earth-shaking booming noises sounded. Ah! The tomb is collapsing. Run! Run! The elves ran faster than bunnies. For the players in the old shops, the world of the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 4 was also a new backdrop. They could only find a few traces about such factions in a few scrolls in the Shu Mountain faction. In the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 1 era, the fall of the Qianghua faction was an unexplainable ancient mystery. Now, they were trying to find the answer to the mystery by tracing the footsteps of the people who were ancient even for the characters in the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 1. How come I feel like this story so far has nothing to do with the Qianghua faction? Maybe Yun Tianhe's parents are related to the Qianghua faction. In Su Tianji's live streaming room, all kinds of questions flooded her screen. Ugh! Su Tianji chose an option and said, "Do you see that? I can choose to control Han Lingsha. In the game, if the players weren't in the important parts involving crucial events and the learning of Dharma spells, they could change some of the later plot through their different actions. If the players wanted to get the perfect ending, they could do it by looking at Han Lingsha's actions from the perspective of Yun Tianhe. Likewise, they could choose to play as Han Lingsha and see how Yun Tianhe made his decisions. Of course, since the players would have the memories, habits, and intuitions of these characters in their mind, they could feel what they should do next. I feel like I must go to a place named Nest Lake. While controlling Han Lingsha, Su Tianji explained, in the Legend of Sword and Fairy game series, there are always wild animals and monsters in the wilderness. I have a feeling that we can't reach it before night. Will we encounter any dangers? Bullet comments shot up on the screen. Song Qingfeng said, "It's easy when you encounter danger. Just use the sword control technique." Lin Xiao chimed in, "She doesn't need the sword control technique. With a shot of the Su Tianji cannon, she can destroy the whole lake." The Cloud Ocean faction master Yesong Tao commented, "She can swim in the lake by jumping with the leap of faith. She'll be fine even if she lands on her face." Oh! You guys! Su Tianji had the urge to jump up and beat them. "I remember every one of you who bad-mouthed me." Humph! In the game, Han Lingsha gritted her teeth under Su Tianji's control. "Don't let me catch you guys! Don't run after you get offline! These people are infuriating. If I knew a day like this would happen, I wouldn't have live-streamed Assassin's Creed that day." It was night in the game. The reeds swayed around in the lake. Putting up a bonfire and sleeping on the bank of the river in the high reeds under the moon was quite an enjoyable experience. In the new shop, the scenery-loving elves stood by the lake and watched as the sun set in the west across the lake and moon rose high into the sky from the east. Of course, if Yun Tianhe wasn't starving and didn't try to draw out male boars by copying the honks of a female boar, the players could continue enjoying the tranquil beauty. "Oh! I didn't know that hunting can be done this way." The elves looked interested. After all, they had grown up in the forest, and hunting was their strong suit. While considering trying this trick when they returned, the elves stared at the reeds intently. No! Intense murderous spirit! The elves had acute senses, and so did Yun Tianhe, who had grown up in the mountains. His senses were even sharper. In a flash, Yun Tianhe rolled to one side. A black shadow lunged out from the deep reeds. It was so swift that it brought sharp whines with it. "Monsters!" Han Lingsha yelled in alarm. Then, the players saw that the attackers were tigers standing on hind legs. Lightning spell! Helen had also come to this place. Bright blue lightning bolts erupted from her sword. Fly feather arrow! Almost instantly, Elf Captain Lance controlled Yun Tianhe to dodge the attack and then pull the bow to the fullest. Fly feather arrow was an archery skill that Yun Tianhe created. With his poor talent and more than a decade of hunting experience in the mountains, Yun Tianhe obviously was very skillful in archery instead of cultivation. Likewise, these elves were also skillful archers. Elf Captain Lance had even added some of the elf clan's excellent archery skills into his shooting. Wangshu's sword shot out like a rainbow. Swoosh! The monster moved like a flash of lightning. Didn't hit the vital point. Lance was startled. These monsters are powerful. Fortunately, Wangshu could fly back by itself. After catching Wang Shu, Elf Captain Lance placed the sword on the bow again, feeling as if he were hunting magic beasts in the forest. Interesting. On the other side, Helen and other knights dashed toward the demon beasts with the sword in hand. Sword energies flew on the screen. We should be fine as long as we kill all these demon beasts. Su Tianji also had Wang Shu in her hand. Obviously, she had switched back from Han Lingsha to Yun Tianhe. It was an accident in Assassin's Creed, okay? Now, I'll show you my real skill. With a strong gust, a monster lunged at her with a roar. Su Tianji lifted her sword and charged. Ear-piercing grinding noises sounded when the sword connected with the monster's claws. The sharp claws were swept to one side by the blade, and then a streak of blood gushed out. A deep bloody wound appeared in the neck of one monster. How about this counterattack? Su Tianji said proudly, who dares to call me an idle streamer? Awesome! This is interesting. Not as good as Senior Nalan. It's good, it is good enough. After all, Senior is a professional at using swords. No one is his match. Soon, she killed the second monster. Praises instantly flooded the screen. Ha 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 ha. Su Tianji was smug when she looked at the couple of monsters lying dead on the ground. I can deal with 40 of such minor monsters. Roar. Roars sounded while about 40 demon beasts charged out from the reeds. Su Tianji gaped at the scene in a daze. FK. Don't do this to me. I'm doing a live stream. I want to watch how Elder Su deals with about 40 monsters alone. Elder Su's sword skills are unrivaled. Elder Su, I can deal with 40 of such minor monsters. Su Tianji almost jumped up from her seat. Damn it! Can I live stream properly? In fact, many other players had also come to this part. Han Lingsha had been wounded while they escaped. Yun Tianhe guarded her and didn't have any intention to flee by himself. It seemed like they were doomed. My goodness, what can they do now? How come there are so many monsters? Merlin slapped his hand on his thigh and said, I don't believe that they can escape this time. Suddenly, sword energies flashed in the sky like shooting stars. Look! What are those? Forming a prison with sword array, many flight swords with blazing white spiritual light turned into a sword array in the sky and surrounded the demon beasts. Sword immortals! Sala and other elves instantly exclaimed. The sword energies full of spiritual essence looked extremely bright in the pitch-black sky. More than 50 sword energies danced and surrounded the demon beasts. The sword energies rotated and then shot across the sky like beautiful shooting stars. The demon beasts howled while the bright white sword energies pierced through their chests. At this moment, another group of sword energies gathered and merged into a huge dazzling sword. Its radiance blinded people who looked at it directly. Subconsciously, the players covered their eyes with their hands. Meanwhile, the huge sword crashed down like a meteorite, exploding with an overwhelming sword spirit which swallowed all the monsters in the blink of an eye. When the light dimmed, the audience saw many monsters falling from the sky, either pierced through by sword energies or shattered by the huge sword energy. None of them survived. At this moment, dozens of sword energies drew beautiful and elegant arcs in the sky like feathers or flowers, coming together to the center. A figure wearing blue and white clothes floated down from the sky like a feather, lightly landing on a flying sword that was emitting a bright light. The other dozens of sword energies danced and flew back into the blue long case behind him. This person waved his sleeve, and nectar fell onto Yun Tianhe and Han Lingsha, healing their wounds at a visible speed. Then, this person floated away. Is he a sword immortal? All the players in the game gazed at the sky in a daze. This, Commander Elvin couldn't find words to describe his feeling. Ethereal. Helen looked at the illiterate commander in disdain. Right. 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 Commander Elvin said, he reminds me of those existences in the ancient legends and mythologies. So powerful, not only the knights and mercenaries, but the elves were staring at the scene in a daze as well. Is he a human? Sala glanced at Commander Elvin and Big Sword Crete and then at the figure on the screen. How come I feel like humans and these humans are two different species? Is there a humanoid race named Sword Immortals? Otherwise, which humans can act so elegantly and ethereally? Although they had seen people flying on swords in the previous war, those people were copycats and were not nearly as graceful as this figure who mastered the authentic skill. They say that all the cultivators can do this. Oh. Lingsha said that they will find sword immortals in Chen State. Does it mean that we can learn this while playing as Yuan Tianhe? If we master this skill, we can also fly around standing on swords in the game. Seeing such an elegant and ethereal skill, the elves were eager to try it. Can we do this too? I want to try flying on swords. Elf girl Sala had stars in her eyes and couldn't wait to try it. I'll try it too. After turning his dazed gaze from the screen, Merlin snapped back to reality and hurried back to his seat. They seem to say that the pattern on the tombstone of Yuan Tianhe's parents looks the same as the pattern on the clothes of those sword immortals, Helen said while she watched the story. I got it. The following story will tell us how he finds out the things about his parents while he learns the sword control technique from these sword immortals. We'll surely get the chance to watch how that miraculous spiritual spell is used. On Helen's screen, Han Lingsha was considering how they would learn the sword control technique. If your parents had lived in the mountains as hermits for many years, they wouldn't have known these people. But they might be related to this cultivation faction in some ways. On the screen, Han Lingsha murmured to herself, it seems like I was right. This savage's father must have been a sword immortal. Wonderful. Faction? What's that? Yuan Tianhe looked at Han Lingsha in bafflement. Helen was also curious, and she wondered, yet. What is a faction? In frustration, Han Lingsha explained, I can't bear you. In simple terms, a faction is a group of people who gather together and cultivate. So that is what it is. Helen understood the situation. A faction is like a school of thought and a society in our world. In fact, these new players were as ignorant about this world outside the mountain as Yuan Tianhe, who was a young man born and raised in the mountains. With Yuan Tianhe, they started to understand this world in the game step by step. Yuan Tianhe would ask Han Lingsha some basic questions that almost everyone should know. For the players in the old shop, they only felt indulgent for his ignorance of the world and even found him cute. But the elves and knights were different. Like Yuan Tianhe, they didn't know the answers to these basic questions either. They traveled from the Green Bird Peak to the Peace Village at the foot of the mountain, and then from Peace Village to Nest Lake to Lu Mansion in Shaoyang City. After entering the city, Han Lingsha said, let's go and find something to eat in a Kayan. Yuan Tianhe replied, Kayan? What's that? Han Lingsha said, Kayan is a place for people to rest. Oh. It's an inn. The players understood immediately. They stood before a wanted notice. The knights and elves controlled Yuan Tianhe and walked to the poster. Ugh! Is this Lingsha? The picture of her looks very lifelike. Some constables walked over and asked, young man, have you seen the girl in the picture? The knights and elves controlled Yuan Tianhe and replied, oh. I have. She just entered the Kayan. They felt happy to have the chance to use this word Kayan so soon. Walking out of the Kayan, Han Lingsha saw this scene and was at a loss for words. Inside the Lu Mansion, Lu Shifeng, the adoptive father of Lu Mengli, said, come on in, nephew. Come in, the knights and elves controlled Yuan Tianhe and replied, did you call me nephew? Lu Shifeng said, ha ha ha. Of course. If you want, you can call me Uncle Lu. The knights and elves controlled Yuan Tianhe and replied, okay. Uncle Lu. Oh, 8 hours already passed. Sala stretched her back in comfort. Meanwhile, many others had also finished their 8 hours of playtime today. They sat down on the couches in the lounge area with Sprite or red tea in their hands. Some took the opportunity to buy a mug of cappuccino or a bag of potato chips. A large group of players could be seen in the lounge area. Ugh! No, at this moment, Helen exclaimed, didn't we agree to try this new game after breakfast and then go back for training? One of the Golden Griffin Knights said to one of his peers with a dark expression, I told you to remind me. Why didn't you remind me? Ugh, the other knight looked to the other side and asked, didn't I tell you to remind me? Anyway, we trained in the Cultivation mystical realm. It counts as training. Commander Elvin found an excuse for themselves. Ah ha ha ha. Right. I feel like my sword skills have improved. The knights immediately said while laughing. Sir! Sir! Mr. Fang was still playing the game, but he was dragged over by elf girl Sala to the lounge area. Can you tell us about it? Elf girl Sala patted the seat beside her on the couch while asking Mr. Fang to sit down. Sala sat with Elder Sewell next to Mr. Fang, and she said, I still feel like there are many things that I don't understand. So do we, Commander Elvin said, we indeed learned many things, but we got more questions in the process, he. I'll sit down here. Merlin had realized that this mystical realm was quite unusual. Hearing the people talking about it, he immediately joined in. The players asked many questions about the basics and some questions concerning the complex workings of this world. How about this? Mr. Fang said, I'll write a knowledge post and explain all the things that you don't understand. If you have any more questions, I'll add them in the post later. Although an internet cafe owner wasn't a teacher, it was clearly Mr. Fang's job right now. Awesome! The players' eyes lit up. In the game, Yuan Tianhe could bring his questions to Han Lingsha. If the players had more questions, they would find answers in Mr. Fang's knowledge post. Everything seemed complete. Sir, will Yuan Tianhe and Han Lingsha find the sword immortals and learn the sword control technique? What kind of people do you think Yuan Tianhe's parents are? Yuan Tianhe's Wangsha sword is a powerful alchemy item, right? Sir. Do you think it was balmy in the afternoon? Without blazing sunshine or gloomy rain, it was a perfect time for a chat over tea. These people talked among themselves in the lounge area with red iced tea or cappuccino in hands. Right now, the elves, mercenaries, knights, and even assassins had only one identity: fans of the Legend of Sword and Fairy 4. I can't wait to see their alchemy techniques, Great Mage Merlin said. I think the archery and the sword control technique are more interesting. Don't you think so, sir? Elf Captain Lance stuffed a potato chip into his mouth, obviously in a good mood. I think this kid Yuan Tianhe is interesting, Assassin Harrison commented in excitement behind them. Also, that sword immortal looks so dashing. I wonder if we'll see him again. I hope so. Joseph, Ron, and other young people said hopefully. Before they knew it, it was late in the night. While bugs occasionally chirped from the bushes around the flower bed, Kanglan City was as quiet as usual. Moonlight spread over the street before the shop like a silverish white carpet. The last few players reluctantly walked out of the shop in groups of 2 or 3, savoring the progress that they had made today. However, nothing is constant in the world. Every person had their own path. Despite their reluctance, some people had to leave to do certain things. Inside the godly palace of Grey Eagle City. It was late, but lights were still burning brightly inside the palace. I think they're scared. In the palace, Luther listened to the report from the knight standing before him while sneering. As I expected, the real aristocrats in Kanglan City regard the ridiculous assassin mystical realm with contempt, which is why they began to advertise their East Continent mystical realm. However, the lava workshop is useless. The knight captain said with a snort, their so-called interception plan had no effect. That person seems to have a powerful background, he is not someone broken. If we can't destroy his business, I think we'll have a problem, at least here in the Morning Light Empire. Don't worry. Luther poured himself a glass of wine and said calmly, let this guy live a few more days. Our priority right now is to deal with these assassins. His expression turned cold as he said, these lowly rats really think that we can do nothing to them? This time, I'll show them that the reason that we haven't destroyed them is that we don't think garbage deserve our efforts. At this moment, noises came from outside the palace when several assassins were dragged over. These guys are well known among those bugs. Luther gave a signal to the knight captain with his eyes, and the latter drew out his huge sword from his back and viciously smashed it onto one assassin's hand. With a soul-wrenching scream, the bones in the slim and nimble hand were instantly shattered and made a series of cracking noises. Okay. It's time to wake up. Damn rat. Luther said coldly, get the scaffolds ready. We've released the news long ago, and I don't think they will sit back and watch. Yes. The knight captain immediately put the assassins into prisoner transport vehicles and brought them to the execution grounds.